Chapter 451. Glaring angrily, Poplar Fruit pushed the table away and stood up. The bowls, chopsticks, and condiments on the table all clattered together, scaring the customers in the breakfast shop. Poplar Fruit didn't care whether he paid the bill or not. He jumped out of the shop like an arrow leaving the bow. Looking in the direction of the sound, Poplar Fruit saw a scene that made his eyes pop. 5 minutes ago, Poplar Fruit was still tasting the rice noodle roll and preserved egg and lean meat porridge in the breakfast shop, and the two old men hadn't started their discussion yet. Song Jiwen strolled to the market with Kiki, who was following him like a shadow. Originally, Song Jiwen wanted to go in, but when he saw the dirty situation in the market, he decided against it. Fortunately, the fruit vendors had moved their stalls outside the market, so they could buy fruits on the road. How much are the oranges? Song Jiwen pretended to bargain for a while, and then began to pick some oranges that looked good. He lowered his head and picked while not forgetting to remind Kiki, "Don't run around, Uncle will give you a small orange." The surrounding environment was completely unfamiliar to Kiki, but it was also full of novelty and fun. Kiki smiled sweetly and took a small orange. She held it with 2 small hands and walked around the fruit stall, looking left and right. Goldie wagged its tail and followed behind Kiki. "Well, the oranges here taste good." When the stall owner was weighing the oranges, Song Jiwen couldn't help but peel off another orange to taste. He smiled and said, "Count the ones I ate and the ones my little niece took." "Okay, no problem. Our local oranges are all born and raised here. They're all natural and don't need any medicine. Of course they're delicious, haha." The stall owner laughed. Just when Song Jiwen took out his wallet to pay, the roar of a motorcycle suddenly sounded, followed by the screams of the people on the street. "Watch out for the car, Kiki." Song Jiwen turned his head to see what was going on, but he found that Kiki had walked to the sidewalk without him knowing. He dropped the bag of oranges and hurried over. Song Jiwen had just looked up when he saw the 2 black motorcycles that were at the corner of the street had already arrived in front of him. On the motorcycle closest to him were 2 men wearing helmets. Their ferocious faces were clearly visible. "Ah!" Before Song Jiwen could react, the man on the back seat of the motorcycle suddenly raised a leg and kicked him to the ground. The force was not great, but the inertia of the motorcycle made Song Jiwen roll twice on the ground. Of the 2 motorcycles, the one that kicked Song Jiwen over was the auxiliary one, and the one behind was the main one. When Song Jiwen raised his head on the ground, he saw the motorcycle behind stop with a harsh braking sound next to Kiki, who was already petrified. The helmeted man in the back seat reached out his hand to Kiki's back. "Ah!" Song Jiwen's mind went blank, and from his chest burst out a roar. This was also the cry that Poplar Fruit heard. When Poplar Fruit rushed out, the 2 motorcycles had already started again, and Kiki was caught by the person on the motorcycle behind like an eagle catching a chick. The motorcycle turned around and was about to escape in the direction they came from. "Papa, Papa!" Kiki was frightened. Her high-pitched screams and cries penetrated all the noise and reached Poplar Fruit's ears. Like a saw, Poplar Fruit's heart was sawed again and again. No! At this moment, Poplar Fruit's whole body burst out with great power. The internal force in his dantian poured energy into his legs like a water pump. Before his voice fell, he turned into a black shadow and rushed out. Poplar Fruit was more than 200 meters away from the place where Kiki was intercepted. Even if it was a 100-meter sprint, it would take the world champion Usain Bolt 20 seconds to complete the 200 meters. What's more, the other party was driving a motorcycle. The motorcycle was so fast that sometimes it was difficult for cars to catch up. However, even if it was wishful thinking, Poplar Fruit desperately wanted to get his daughter back. This group of people was the group that abducted children. The police had been tracking them for more than a year without any results. If Kiki was taken away, Poplar Fruit did not dare to imagine what kind of terrible experience Kiki would have. He did not have time to think about it now. His daughter's heart-wrenching cries made Poplar Fruit burst out with a speed that was far beyond his strength. His sprinting figure was somewhat blurred. If someone counted with a watch, they would be surprised to find that Poplar Fruit's 100-meter sprint had broken through 8 seconds, which was beyond the current human limit. However, even so, the speed of the motorcycle was still incomparable to that of a human. Poplar Fruit felt that after running for more than 100 meters, the distance between him and Kiki seemed to be widened. At this moment he suddenly heard a scream. A yellow figure flashed in Poplar Fruit's eyes. Goldie. Goldie was a good dog. It never bit people, nor was it scary. It was even a little timid. Usually, it liked to hide behind Kiki to seek protection. When Kiki was caught, it seemed to be scared and did not move at all. At this critical moment, Goldie moved. It did not make a sound and ran wildly like a cheetah. It caught up with the motorcycle that caught Kiki at the back. While running, Goldie's muscles suddenly tightened. It jumped and pounced on the person in the back seat. It bit the person's arm and then kicked with its four limbs, trying to find a place to exert force. Because of Goldie's attack, the speed of the motorcycle at the back dropped sharply and began to shake violently. Goldie's bite was no joke. Although the people on the motorcycle were wearing leather, Goldie's sharp teeth had pierced through the leather and firmly bit into the muscles of the person in the back seat. The man who was bitten desperately swung his arm, and Goldie, who was bitten tightly, was swung around like a sandbag. This was also because Goldie was only of medium size at the moment. In another year, when Goldie grew up, it was estimated that it would be able to throw him off the car. Because of the violent movements, the motorcycle was shaking. Poplar Fruit was a little worried that Kiki would fall. He gritted his teeth and sped up again. "Fuck this bastard, I will stew you." The person cursed loudly in pain. He shook his arm, pulled out his right hand that was holding Kiki, and smashed it on Goldie's head with all his might. After all, there was no place to exert force. At first, Goldie could not let go. But later, Goldie's nose was hit in the air. The nose was a dog's weak spot. After being hit, Goldie's body reflexively loosened its bite and was thrown to the ground. It hurts. Fuck drive. The person in the back seat cursed and pushed the person driving. The motorcycle's engine began to roar again, and the speed was about to increase again. Chapter 452. Drive quickly, motherfucker. That mad dog is going to catch up again. The man in the back slapped the gang in front of him and roared through the helmet. Poplar Fruit had always thought that he would not be able to catch up. Although he had surpassed the limits of human beings, the human body could not compete with machines. The motorcycle could reach a speed of 100 or 200 kilometers per hour. Not to mention Poplar Fruit, even Zhang Samfeng would not be able to handle it. However, just as he was about to despair, Gold appeared. Although it was not able to rescue its little master, it still succeeded in buying time for Poplar Fruit by fighting with the robber in the back seat. In just a few seconds, Poplar Fruit had already caught up. "How could I let you run away again?" Poplar Fruit heard the roar of the motorcycle again. He roared, like a bolt from the blue, exploding over the market. "Kiki! Papa!" Hearing her father's voice, Kiki cried out in response. Poplar Fruit's body squeezed out a new force, and he increased his speed again. Suddenly, Poplar Fruit leaped into the air like gold. Because of Poplar Fruit's cry, the robber in the back seat turned his head. At that moment, time seemed to be elongated. Poplar Fruit's figure in the air covered the morning sun, and appeared in the robber's line of sight like a god descending from heaven. Poplar Fruit also clearly saw the surprise, panic, and puzzlement of the robber in the back seat behind the helmet. Time suddenly returned to its normal speed. Poplar Fruit's super short reflexes allowed him to instantly adjust his body in the air. He did not want to pounce on the robber, but threw out a lightning-like punch. He did not hit the man in the back seat, but accurately punched the robber in the neck between his helmet and shoulder. Poplar Fruit's fist, even if he was not standing on the ground, the power was not something that ordinary people could withstand. Moreover, Poplar Fruit's punch was filled with hatred, and almost all of his strength. This punch hit the robber in the back, and he did not know what had happened. His vision turned black, and his whole body was like a sack being hit and flew out. What followed was the loss of control of the motorcycle. The moment the robber was sent flying, the front of the motorcycle twisted. This time, no one could control it anymore. The motorcycle tilted and slammed heavily on the ground. It almost spun. The friction between the motorcycle and the ground created intense sparks. With the help of inertia, the motorcycle flew far away. The robber in the back seat couldn't react in time. He lost control of his body and fell to the ground along with the motorcycle. His left leg was sandwiched between the motorcycle and the ground. He didn't even have time to cry out in pain before he was sent rolling on the ground by the sliding motorcycle. Kiki was on this motorcycle. Poplar Fruit clearly knew this when he jumped up. His reaction was too fast. The moment the robber in the back seat flew out, he reached out and grabbed Kiki from the robber in the back seat. However, he was still in the air, and the two actions of punching and grabbing Kiki in an instant made him completely lose his balance. With Poplar Fruit's super strength, he did not need to be too embarrassed to adjust his body the moment he fell to the ground. However, he could not do that because if he adjusted his body, Kiki would definitely be exposed and injured on the ground. In a split second, Poplar Fruit had already made a decision. He folded his arms like petals and tightly protected Kiki in his arms. He wanted to use his body to protect Kiki. Ugh! Poplar Fruit groaned. He also fell heavily to the ground, and because he hugged Kiki, his body completely lost its balance. His whole body rolled twice on the ground like a round egg. That was not all. Because the motorcycle slid on the ground after falling, and Poplar Fruit had jumped very high, he had jumped over the motorcycle and then fell down. So after sliding for a Xiao Duan, the motorcycle hit Poplar Fruit's butt. The front of the motorcycle twisted and directly squeezed into Poplar Fruit's body. It looked like Poplar Fruit had been hit by the motorcycle. This reversal of the situation happened in a short 2 to 3 seconds. No one could react. Even Song Jiwen, who was running over, was stunned more than 50 meters away. Poplar Fruit once again groaned in pain. He fell and was hit. Even if he had internal energy, Poplar Fruit could not bear it. At this moment, his whole body was burning with pain. There was no need to think about it. He must have fallen on the ground and scraped his skin. He did not know if there were any other bruises. However, Poplar Fruit did not have time to check his injuries. He shook his waist and pushed away the motorcycle that was pressing on his body. He stood up from the ground and quickly carried Kiki in front of him to carefully examine her. Papa. Kiki was not hurt at all under the protection of her father's body. She was still crying in panic. She tightly hugged her father's neck and did not want to let go. Kiki. Poplar Fruit's eyes were red and tears almost flowed out. He choked and said, "It's good that you're okay. It's good that you're okay." Some people say that only when you lose something will you know how to cherish it. Not to mention that he had always cherished it. Today, Poplar Fruit really experienced the pain of losing something. At the moment when he saw Kiki was caught on the motorcycle, his mood was very complicated. Not only did he feel heartbroken, but also as if his body was torn apart, and he was about to lose something. Moreover, he was instantly confused, as if his life was about to be shrouded in dark clouds. Fortunately, with Jean Zi's delay, he successfully rescued Kiki and brought her back safe and sound. Only by tightly holding his daughter in his arms could Poplar Fruit's hanging heart slowly relax. Love was like a trickle, once again filling up Poplar Fruit's lost heart. Poplar Fruit suddenly wished that he and Kiki were the only ones left in this world, because then they would not be disturbed by these bad guys. Poplar Fruit's fall and the motorcycle hit were not light, but his endurance was stronger, so he stood there as if nothing had happened. The two robbers were not so lucky. One of them had been knocked unconscious by Poplar Fruit and had not yet woken up. The other one was even more miserable. He was hit by the motorcycle and rolled on the ground. Now he was lying on the ground, holding his leg and crying bitterly. Lao gua lao gua. At this time, Song Jiwen hurriedly ran over. His eyes were full of remorse and guilt. Poplar Fruit was relieved to let Song Jiwen bring Kiki out, but he did not fulfill his responsibility of taking care of her. Fortunately, Kiki was fine. Otherwise, Song Jiwen would not have the face to face Poplar Fruit again. Boom boom. Boom boom. Before Poplar Fruit could answer, the roar of two motorcycles was heard. Poplar Fruit's face sank. He turned his head to look, and his eyebrows were about to rise. Chapter 453. After saving Kiki, Poplar Fruit's head was filled with uncontrollable joy, so much so that Poplar Fruit forgot that there were other accomplices among the two robbers who fell to the ground. Hearing the nightmarish roar of the motorcycle again, Poplar Fruit's eyes were once again smeared with a layer of blood red from anger. Turning his head fiercely, Poplar Fruit saw two motorcycles coming from afar. At first, there were only two motorcycles that came to catch the children. One was to catch the children, and the other was to clear the way. Now that Poplar Fruit had overturned one of them, there were two more motorcycles. It seemed that they still had one more motorbike waiting to pick them up. This group of robbers was actually so meticulous in their arrangements. No wonder they hadn't been caught for so long. This group of robbers didn't know that they had encountered Waterloo in this small county. Originally, after they abducted the two children at the same time in the city, according to the original plan, they should have quickly evacuated, ready to leave Guangdong province and sneak into other provinces to continue their crimes. Just as they were packing up and leaving, a gang suddenly proposed. Since the police think that we are changing places after shooting, why don't we do the opposite? This proposal made the whole gang excited. Being able to play a cat-and-mouse game with the Guangdong province's police for so long, they were a little arrogant, and they all agreed to this proposal. If they could once again humiliate the Guangdong province's police before leaving Guangdong province, it would be a great feeling. So on the way out, they chose this small county near the provincial border. Kiki was their unfortunate target. If Kiki hadn't appeared today, the other children would have fallen into their evil hands. However, they were up against Poplar Fruit. Under such a disadvantage, Poplar Fruit actually rescued Kiki. The arrest of Kiki had caused a big commotion, so it was very likely that someone had already called the police. If it wasn't for the fact that the two accomplices of the robbers were under Yongguo's control, they would have escaped long ago. They couldn't just run away like that. The two robbers on the auxiliary motorcycle had no choice but to call for their accomplices, preparing to go back and rescue their accomplices. Mosquito, protect Kiki. Poplar Fruit's eyes were red. He took down Kiki, who was hanging on his neck like a koala bear, and stuffed her into Song Jiwen's arms. Then he turned his head to greet them. They actually had the idea of taking Kiki. Poplar Fruit was like an enraged bull at the moment. He clenched his fists, and there was only one thought left in his mind. End them. Get out of the way. The men on the back seats of the two motorcycles stood up, waving a large wrench in their hands. One of them pointed at Yongguo arrogantly and shouted. Originally, there were onlookers who wanted to help, but when they saw the menacing motorcycles and the wrenching wrenches, they shrank back in fear. Poplar Fruit didn't need their help. Against these two motorcycles, Poplar Fruit was very confident. Fuck your mother. The motorcycle in front was about to pass by Yongguo on the left. The man standing on the back seat spat out vulgarities and smashed the motorcycle with his arm. Poplar Fruit's eyes flashed with a trace of sharpness. His body flashed, and then he folded his hands. The robber in the back seat's wrench missed. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. With the motorcycle's speed, the wrench was already out of sight. How could it be dodged? However, the shock in his eyes was immediately replaced by fear and pain. Poplar Fruit grabbed the robber in the back seat like lightning. One hand was on the outside of the robber's elbow, and the other hand just twisted. Again, with the motorcycle's speed, only a crisp sound was heard. The robber in the back seat had his right hand broken at a 90-degree angle. Everything happened so fast that the robber didn't even have time to scream. He was lightly pushed by Poplar Fruit. His whole body flew like a cloud, and he fell from the motorcycle to the ground. The second motorcycle, which was a step slower, arrived with a howl. This time, the motorcycle came to a stop beside Yongguo. The robber on the back seat used the inertia to leap into the air. He held a large wrench with both hands and smashed it towards Yongguo like he was going to split Mount Hua. Poplar Fruit's eyes flashed with a trace of ridicule. He turned sideways and threw a kick. His left leg was like a snake coming out of its hole. It pierced through the robber's wrench and legs. The tip of his foot tapped on the robber's lower abdomen. Inch pierce. This was the 8 steps meteor kick that emphasized the most speed was perfectly executed by Poplar Fruit in a state of rage. The onlookers didn't have time to react. They saw the robber who had jumped in the air fly back the way he came. It wasn't until he smashed his companion's motorcycle that he covered his stomach and held his waist and rolled on the ground in pain. Virum. The robber who was driving the motorcycle turned his head. Under the helmet, his face was as gloomy as ink. His murderous eyes revealed a crazy hatred. He kept twisting the throttle, and the motorcycle didn't slow down at all as it crashed into Poplar Fruit. Old Gua. Just as Song Jiwen's warning rang out, Poplar Fruit had already reacted. He moved his body half a meter to the side in an instant. He wanted to catch the robber off guard. The robber, who thought he was going to crash into Poplar Fruit, had a trace of disbelief in his eyes. Before he could figure out how Poplar Fruit had dodged, Poplar Fruit's flying kick came again. Poplar Fruit leapt into the air. He jumped more than a meter into the air, about the same height as the robber's motorcycle. Poplar Fruit's left leg kicked out, hitting the robber's elbow. Then his right leg kicked out as well, landing heavily on the robber's waist. The kick to the elbow was very strong. The robber's left hand, which was tightly gripping the front of the motorcycle, couldn't hold on any longer. The second kick was even stronger, and there was a trace of hidden strength. If the robber wasn't standing on the ground, his waist would definitely have suffered internal injuries. Moreover, these internal injuries wouldn't be immediately discovered. In about 8 to 10 days, the internal injuries would appear in his lungs. He would inevitably cough up blood like a tuberculosis patient. No matter what happened in the future, the robber who wanted to crash into Poplar Fruit was sent flying by Poplar Fruit's consecutive kicks. With a roll, the robber fell far away on the ground. Soon, only a faint groan could be heard. The driver of the last car was quite tactful. When he saw Yonggua's display of invincible might and continuously overturned their people, he was so frightened that he screamed and ran away. Why did he run away? Because when his companion in the back seat was kicked back by Poplar Fruit, his motorcycle had flipped over. It wasn't easy for him to pull his leg out from under the heavy motorcycle. How could he care about picking it up again? Want to run? Poplar Fruit looked at him coldly and snorted in his heart. How could I let you run away? Chapter 454. You want to run? It's not that easy. There were already a few onlookers who had gathered their courage. Seeing how easily Poplar Fruit had defeated the robbers, they began to feel that those people were only fierce and not that scary. They started to chase after him. However, this was Poplar Fruit's battle. How could he leave Poplar Fruit to others? Looking around, Poplar Fruit saw a helmet that had rolled near him. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. He stretched out his foot and lightly tapped it, and the helmet flew vertically into the air. Of course, Poplar Fruit would not kick the helmet away like in the movies. He used to play football and knew how bad his footwork was. So he directly took the helmet from the air into his hand. Weighing it, Poplar Fruit estimated its weight. Then, he grabbed it with his right hand, lightly trotted 2 steps, and threw it with force. The helmet drew a beautiful arc in the air. With a thud, it hit the escaping robber's helmet. Under the effect of the acceleration of gravity, the robber fell to the ground with a plop. Poplar Fruit, who had quickly followed, opened his mouth. He did not expect to throw it so accurately. He thought that at most it would hit the robber's foot or body. At worst, it would only scare him. This smash did not cause too much damage. After all, it was only the collision of 2 helmets. However, Poplar Fruit seized the opportunity to close the distance between the 2 of them. The robber who got up from the ground turned his head to look. Poplar Fruit was already standing beside him, looking at him coldly. He was unwilling to be captured without putting up a fight, but if he wanted to escape, he had to get past Poplar Fruit. Fuck your grandfather. The robber cursed. He bent down to pick up the helmet that he had just knocked over, and used it as a weapon to swing it at Poplar Fruit. He had already fallen to this point, but he was still so arrogant. The image of Kiki being kidnapped by them appeared in Poplar Fruit's mind, and his eyes turned red again. Poplar Fruit really didn't care about this robber, who was only at the level of an ordinary person. However, the robber's arrogance ignited Poplar Fruit's anger, and he went up to meet him. With a light wave of his right hand, the helmet that the robber had thrown at him missed. Poplar Fruit's left hand followed behind his right hand, twisting and lifting the robber's arm. With a clang, the robber lost his grip on the helmet and fell to the ground. Poplar Fruit thought that there were onlookers behind them, so he would not break the man's arm again. However, he was not willing to let the man in front of him go. His companion was already in such a miserable state. How could he let him go? Poplar Fruit had an idea as he looked at the guy who was wearing a helmet. He clenched his right hand into a fist and threw a punch at the guy. With a bang, Poplar Fruit's fist smashed the front panel of the motorcycle helmet, directly shattering the glass. The robber was scared out of his wits. Although he didn't hit a person, Poplar Fruit's fist didn't hurt much. Instead, the robber was a little dizzy from the impact of the helmet. This effect could be compared to striking a bell. If there was a person standing inside a bell, the person inside would definitely bleed from all 7 orifices. Of course, the impact of the helmet wasn't as serious as striking a bell. However, the feeling of hitting a bull through a mountain was still very uncomfortable. But this wasn't the end. Poplar Fruit greeted the robber's helmet with punch after punch. Because Poplar Fruit's left hand was holding the robber's arm, the robber couldn't dodge. Every time the robber was knocked out and about to fall back, he would immediately be pulled back by Poplar Fruit. His whole body was like a roly-poly toy being beaten around and around like a sandbag. At first, the robber was still begging for mercy, but gradually, there was no sound. Poplar Fruit coldly snorted. He suddenly jumped up, and his right fist slammed hard on the top of the helmet. This time, the force was so great that the helmet actually cracked open, shaking off his left hand. The robber was like a melted ice cream that collapsed to the ground. It was certain that the robber wasn't dead. Poplar Fruit remembered his elder brother Hwang's advice. He didn't kill him like he did at the bank. However, this random beating was probably unavoidable for the robber to have a concussion. Old Gua. Song Jiwen came over, looking at Poplar Fruit with a little apologetic and a little worshipful. The battle just now really made him dazzled. He knew that Poplar Fruit had some martial arts, but he didn't expect him to be able to defeat 4 ferocious enemies so cleanly. It was really beyond his expectations. It's okay. Poplar Fruit gently patted Song Jiwen's shoulder to comfort him. At first, when he ran out of the shop and saw that Kiki was caught, Poplar Fruit was still a little bit resentful towards Song Jiwen. However, when he ran out and saw that Song Jiwen was also kicked to the ground, Poplar Fruit had already forgiven him. Papa. Kiki, who was still in a state of shock, threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms. She tightly hugged her father's neck and kept crying on Poplar Fruit's collar. Kiki, be good. Papa is here, don't be afraid. Poplar Fruit still had a trace of fear in his heart, but he still gently comforted his daughter. Woo-woo. Goldie, who was just thrown to the ground from the motorcycle, also wagged its tail and limped to the feet of Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen. Poplar Fruit squatted down, lovingly touched the dirty fur of Goldie, and examined it. Today, Goldie could be said to have made a great contribution. Fortunately, there were no scars on its body. It was just a little bit stiff from the fall, which made Poplar Fruit feel a little relieved. Fortunately, I brought Goldie out this time. Song Jiwen at this time also squatted down, and said with a sigh, "Yes, tonight I'll reward you with a big bone." Poplar Fruit smilingly patted Goldie's head, and said with a smile. At this time, the onlookers had already surrounded the robbers. One of them wanted to run away, but was beaten back. After word of mouth, everyone knew that they were the robbers who kidnapped and sold children. Suddenly, the crowd became agitated and rushed up to beat them. Seeing that someone was about to die, fortunately, the police of the small county finally arrived. They quickly separated the crowd and took away all the robbers. After the police understood the situation, they also invited Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen to the Public Security Bureau. "Sorry, I'm too busy today. I don't have time to thank you." Recording statements, arresting the robbers, and hunting down the remaining gang members. They were busy from early morning to 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Together with the investigation team from the city and the province, they finally caught all the robbers in one fell swoop. Poplar Fruit smiled and shook hands with the director of the Public Security Bureau, and said, "It's okay, this is what we should do." The leaders of the province said that they want to give you a commendation. Do you want to hear it? The director smiled. No. Poplar Fruit was stunned. He smiled and shook his head, and said, "A tall tree attracts the wind. If there are other robbers wandering outside, and know that I'm the one who ruined their good thing, it would be terrible." Song Jiwen also politely refused. He was a civil servant. Sometimes, this kind of honor was not necessarily a good thing. It was better to keep a low profile. Today's matter was just an end. The police's investigation was far from over. Interrogating the robbers, tracking down the people involved in the child kidnapping case, rescuing the children who were sold to an unknown place, this series of events would take several months, or even half a year. However, this did not have much to do with Poplar Fruit. They did not continue to stay in this small county. Instead, they embarked on their journey again. Chapter 455. There wouldn't be too much of a travel plot. What happened in the middle was the key. In the evening, the leaders of the investigation team, who owed Poplar Fruit a favor, invited Poplar Fruit and the others for a meal. Poplar Fruit didn't want to make too much trouble. Kiki's mood hadn't stabilized yet. So after a simple meal, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen set off again. "I'll drive first. I slept enough during the day." Song Jiwen grabbed Poplar Fruit's key and said, "You stay with your daughter. Drive steadily." Poplar Fruit nodded and got into the back seat with Kiki in his arms. For the first time, he didn't let Kiki sit back in her exclusive baby safety seat. Instead, he held Kiki in his arms. Today's events had scared Chi-Chi out of her wits. Although it was still difficult for her little brain to comprehend what trafficking was, the terror of being forcibly abducted by strangers still filled her mind. She couldn't sleep or eat well. This was Kiki's current situation. Throughout the day, except for some porridge for breakfast, she only drank some milk when she was hungry. Poplar Fruit fed her porridge personally. He especially borrowed the kitchen of the Public Security Bureau's cafeteria. She looked dispirited and buried her head in her father's arms, unwilling to open her mouth. Now that she had finally been coaxed to sleep, she was still clutching her father's clothes tightly. She had to lean her head against her father's chest and listen to his steady and powerful heartbeat. Only then did her tightly knitted eyebrows relax a little. Poplar Fruit lowered the seat, then held Kiki and lay in the back seat. He held Kiki's little butt with one hand across the small blanket, and gently stroked Kiki's hair with the other hand, and then gently patted her petite back. "Papa." After a long time, Poplar Fruit suddenly heard Kiki's weak cry. He thought Kiki woke up. He opened his eyes and found that her eyes were closed, her little nose wrinkled, her little red mouth slightly murmured, and her feet were twitching. Kiki had a nightmare. This was a situation that had never happened before. Poplar Fruit was a little irritated, and there was a kind of hostility in his heart that made him want to kill those kidnappers. However, in the end, he was awakened by his love for Chi-Chi. "Kiki, Papa is here. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid." Poplar Fruit put his mouth next to Kiki's sparkling and jade-like little ear, and gently called out. He also hugged Kiki and changed her to a more comfortable sleeping position. Nightmares sometimes had something to do with the wrong sleeping position. With Poplar Fruit's call, Kiki's uncomfortable expression gradually eased, and her breathing finally returned to normal. The father and daughter hugged each other to sleep again. At night, Song Jiwen drove for more than 4 hours. He was finally tired, so they stopped at a toll station. "I'll drive." Poplar Fruit gently put the sleeping Kiki back to the baby protection seat in the front passenger seat. After observing for a while, he said to Song Jiwen, "Is it okay?" Song Jiwen stood under the night sky and twisted his body. His bones made a cracking sound as he asked, "It's okay, I'll pay attention." Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "After she fell asleep, I felt a lot better." "Okay, I'll sleep." Song Jiwen patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and got into the back seat. Song Jiwen was partly responsible for what happened today, and he felt very guilty. However, when they were in the small county, Poplar Fruit comforted him. No one wanted to encounter such a thing, and it was not Song Jiwen's fault. As long as Kiki was fine, everything was fine. There was no need to hold grudges between brothers because of something that did not lead to a big disaster, so Song Jiwen also recovered now. Driving in the middle of the night, Poplar Fruit did not feel sleepy because the time he needed to sleep was short, and sleeping with Kiki allowed him to get enough rest. Therefore, even though he did not stop driving for the whole night, and was multitasking to take care of Kiki's situation, Poplar Fruit was still full of energy when the sun rose. Glancing at the road sign, Yangshua, Poplar Fruit was a little excited. They had finally arrived at the first place they wanted to visit. Although they were delayed for a day in the last small county in Guangdong province, and although their mood was ruined by the robbers, Poplar Fruit's mood began to recover after entering the territory of Yangshuo. Guilin's landscape is the best in the world. Yangshuo's landscape is the best in Guilin. Before entering the scenic area, Poplar Fruit could feel the charm of the beautiful scenery. Wow! When they arrived at the inn that they had booked online, Song Jiwen had already woken up before Poplar Fruit could wake him up. He yelled and jumped out of the car door, then ran to an open area, stretched out his arms, and breathed in the sweet air. Kiki also woke up. She squinted her eyes and hugged her father's neck, looking left and right. It seemed that after sleeping, Kiki had temporarily forgotten yesterday's terrifying experience. Of course, this was also related to the sense of security she got from leaning against her father's chest. The whole day was handed over to Yangshuo. Poplar Fruit first arranged a place to stay. They booked a double room in this quaint inn, then pushed Song Jiwen, who was a little restless like a bird out of a cage, to wash up and eat breakfast. Let me see. What's the plan for today? Song Jiwen took out a book from his small bag. In it, he recorded the travel plan that he had spent a few days to sum up. Rent a bicycle, ride Yangshuo. Poplar Fruit didn't even look at it, and directly recited the information about Yangshuo. Song Jiwen was also very straightforward. He directly closed the book in his hand, then threw it back on the bed, and lazily said, "Okay, I don't want to carry this thing to make it heavier. You've already memorized everything." Leaving the car at the inn, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen rented 2 bicycles. They each carried a small bag with some personal belongings inside. Kiki was strapped to her father's chest with a strap. She hadn't experienced this for a long time. Ever since Kiki could walk on her own, Poplar Fruit almost never used a strap again. Song Jiwen, on the other hand, was a little grumpy, because he had to use the basket to carry the slightly injured Goldie. With Goldie's current size, about the size of an adult Chinese rural dog, and weight, it was very awkward to ride. However, he didn't refuse because Jinzi was the hero who saved Kiki. He couldn't be more grateful. Rubbing Kiki's hair, Poplar Fruit smiled and said, let's go, let's go." Coming to Yangshuo, the Shirley Art Gallery was one of the must-visit attractions. Going south along Geely Road, there were many tourists like Poplar Fruit who rode bicycles. The mighty bicycle army turned the road into a river of bicycles. The scenery along the way was very beautiful. There were picturesque rural scenes, as well as layers upon layers of mountain peaks, lakes, banyan trees, moon mountains, butterfly springs. These were some simple names, but they seemed to represent the natural scenery that seemed to be out of this world. Along the way, they stopped and rode. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon. The main thing was that they couldn't stop taking photos. What made Poplar Fruit the happiest was Kiki's mood. When they first set off, Kiki was still struggling because she couldn't see her father's face. However, as they rode deeper, Kiki also began to greedily look at the beautiful scenery that she had never seen before. From being silent to chatting with her father, she finally got rid of yesterday's psychological shadow. However, good things didn't last long. It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sky suddenly changed. In the blink of an eye, it started to rain. Chapter 456. Song Jiwen touched the rain on his head and couldn't help but hold his knees with both hands. Like a beast, he roared a few times at the pouring rain outside the bus stop. The weather in western Guangdong province was really unpredictable. In the morning, the sky was clear, but in the blink of an eye, dark clouds covered the city and heavy rain poured down. Song Jiwen was depressed. It was rare for him to take so many days off to travel, but he encountered robbers and encountered a rainy day. Couldn't they let him have a good trip? Haha. Yangwa didn't think much of it. He was in the mood for traveling. There were sunny days and there were rainy days. Looking at the ink-colored mountain, wasn't it exactly like what Bai Juyi said about the beauty who hugged the pipa and covered half her face? However, soon Poplar Fruit couldn't laugh anymore. Chirp chirp. Kiki rubbed her little nose in front of her father's chest and sneezed weakly. Although Poplar Fruit had found a coat and put it on Kiki to block the rain, because of yesterday's fright, Kiki was still in a weak state. She was hit by the wet and cold air of the rain and caught a cold. Why did you suddenly catch a cold? Poplar Fruit was a little anxious. He untied the strap and held Kiki face to face. He touched Kiki's little nose, where there was a clear snot. Let's go back by car. Don't wait for the rain to stop. Song Jiwen helped Poplar Fruit hold the bicycle and said. Poplar Fruit nodded. He asked Kiki with some concern. Kiki, are you dizzy? Papa, Kiki is sleepy. After sneezing a few times, Kiki looked very dispirited. She shrank in Poplar Fruit's arms and didn't want to move. This was what Poplar Fruit was most worried about. If the cold worsened and turned into a fever, it would be troublesome. Poplar Fruit wrapped Kiki's body tightly in his coat to reduce the loss of his body temperature in front of Kiki. Then he took out a piece of disinfectant wet tissue and gently wiped Kiki's little nose. Sorry, I can't play today. Poplar Fruit apologetically said to Song Jiwen as he carried the bicycle and got on the bus. Hey, it's okay. It's raining today anyway. I can't play. Song Jiwen waved his hand and said. Back at the inn, Poplar Fruit found the cold medicine that he had prepared for Kiki. But after thinking about it, he still let Kiki eat some porridge first. Taking medicine on an empty stomach was very bad for the body. This time, Poplar Fruit didn't know if it was because he felt guilty for his daughter, but he was very patient when feeding her porridge. He talked nicely to Kiki, who only wanted to sleep, until she ate half a bowl of porridge with vegetables and lean meat. At this time, it was only evening, and the rain outside stopped. Song Jiwen ran out to eat, and also packed a local osmanthus dish for Poplar Fruit. I heard that in Yangshuo, there's a live performance called Lu Sanjia who is very famous. Do you want to go? Song Jiwen sat on the bed with his legs folded, and asked while looking at Poplar Fruit, who was wolfing down the food. No, I have to stay at the inn to take care of her. Poplar Fruit pointed at Kiki, who had already fallen asleep after taking the medicine, and said, It's fine if you go alone, you don't have to take care of me. I knew you would say that. Song Jiwen laughed and said, It's okay, I'll show you the photos later. Thus Song Jiwen excitedly went out. After Poplar Fruit finished eating, he cleaned up, took a shower and climbed into bed. The attentive Poplar Fruit covered Kiki with the corner of the blanket. He was worried that she had a fever, so he used the back of his hand to check the temperature of Kiki's forehead. When he felt that it wasn't overheating, he was relieved. Kiki's little nose was still a little blocked. Because the room was very quiet, Poplar Fruit could still hear a trace of broken breathing. Poplar Fruit used his finger to lovingly stroke the bridge of his daughter's nose, and then caressed her delicate little face, praying for her. There was no Wi-Fi in the inn, but there was still broadband. Bored, Poplar Fruit turned on the computer and thought about connecting to the internet. He was prepared to go to the Xinda translation platform to see if there were any tasks he could do. Poplar Fruit slapped the back of his head. He suddenly remembered that he was here for a vacation. Why was he thinking about work again? I'm going to faint. Rest, don't work anymore. Poplar Fruit mumbled to himself as he prepared to close the computer. However, he remembered that yesterday was the day when the micro-movie, unexpectedly, was released. Poplar Fruit had forgotten about it because he had been tormenting the robbers. Let's see. Poplar Fruit's right hand retracted. He tapped twice on the touchpad and opened the video link. It looks good. Poplar Fruit was happy to see that the video's view count had reached 960,000. He remembered that Shosho had said that only 200,000 views a day was considered a pass. Did that mean that he had already exceeded the quota? In less than 2 days, the number of clicks had almost exceeded 1 million. This had already exceeded Wonhee's expectations. Poplar Fruit was not in a hurry to look at the comments. He put on his headphones and watched the video first. Although he had watched it before, Poplar Fruit could not help but laugh out loud when he saw the video with the introduction and behind-the-scenes highlights. He covered his mouth as he was afraid that it would affect his daughter. The sound of his laughter was muffled and strange. It's so fucking immersive. What's with the comments? Like, deep ice, ha 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 ha. Shosho's products must be the best. Ha ha ha. These actors are too funny. Where did they find them? I know Shosho. Where did Cheonjuan, the flying pig, come from? His acting is so funny. Looking for a sequel. What kind of company is Xinda? Is this bullshit or product placement? This doesn't feel like an advertisement at all. Haha, this is too funny. Amazing styling design, exquisite script and plot. Gorgeous special effects comparable to Hollywood. All of this adds a lot of points to this film. Coupled with the heroic acting of Shosho, I believe the short film will definitely win a big award in Hollywood. Poplar Fruit was grinning from ear to ear. Looking at the comments, almost all of them were red. All kinds of praises were flooding the screen. Of course, there were also some viewers who did not like unexpectedly. However, these were like small fish in the ocean, unable to make any waves. After closing the computer, Poplar Fruit took out his phone and went to the balcony of the hotel room to call Shosho, and Cheonjuan to congratulate him. Listening to their voices, they were all waiting in front of the computer for the results yesterday. Today, they celebrated for the whole day and just went to sleep. After chatting, Poplar Fruit called Wuxia. You're still the best. You did so much promotion, Poplar Fruit laughed. Now the views are almost over 1 million. The results were achieved by everyone. I was just the icing on the cake, Wuxia said modestly. But I have to say, you're really relaxed. Wuxia said. You didn't even come to the company's first big release. You don't need me, right? Poplar Fruit laughed. Xindao sent an executive to attend. How is that the same? Wuxia said sourly. I think you want to stay in Guangzhou with my daughter. That's why you didn't come. Poplar Fruit didn't know how to answer. Chapter 457. Wuxia was usually carefree. Although she would restrain herself a little in front of Poplar Fruit, the arrogance and decisiveness that she had cultivated since she was young had long been buried in her bones. So much so that in Dongxin Publishing, her assistant treated her as the Empress Dowager. Her words were as indisputable as an imperial edict. If the confession on the mountain was impulsive enough, what she said today made Poplar Fruit's jaw drop. It was as if the noble and cold Wuxia bit her lower lip and acted like my daughter was jealous. This was not like Wuxia's character. But how could Poplar Fruit answer this? Poplar Fruit understood Wuxia's feelings, but love was never a fair thing. He could not give up the choice he had already made just because of Wuxia's feelings for him. He did not go to Beijing again because he considered Fang Beibei's feelings, and also because of the aftermath of the dispute with Wuxia's mother. If it was not something very important and he had to go, Poplar Fruit would not fly to Beijing in the short term. However, any further explanation would be futile. Worried that Wuxia would feel even worse, Poplar Fruit remained silent. The night in Yangshuo was not quiet. The night market on West Street was full of tourists, but at least the inn was quiet. Everyone had run out to the streets, and the whole inn could only hear the chirping of insects and cicadas in the bushes and trees. Poplar Fruit did not speak. Wuxia also seemed to be stunned. Her soft breathing could even be heard through the speaker of the phone. Forget it, I won't tease you anymore, Wuxia suddenly said. Her voice was cheerful again, as if nothing could affect her mood. I still have something to do at the publishing house. Okay, don't work too long, rest early. Poplar Fruit secretly let out a sigh of relief. His voice became a little soft. Okay, I know. Wuxia was very happy, but she pretended to be very impatient. After hanging up the phone, Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment before sending a simple message to Fang Beibei, telling her about the twists and turns of the trip in the past 2 days. Just as he put away his phone and was about to return to his room, Fang Beibei called him. Hey uncle. How did you become a father? As soon as he picked up the phone, Fang Beibei's scolding came raining down on him. However, her voice was very low, as if she was afraid of being heard by others. Did you go out to play and only care about peeking at young and pretty girls? He can't even take good care of his own daughter. Where? Poplar Fruit complained. If you want to see young and beautiful girls, I can go to Nansha to see you. Do you need to come all the way to this place? You have a glib tongue. Fang Beibei sneered. You're getting more and more improper. When I first met you, I called you strange uncle. I didn't wrong you at all. Although she said that, Poplar Fruit's words still made Fang Beibei very happy, and her voice inadvertently rose a little. Why didn't you dare to talk properly just now? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Is your family around? Oh. Fong Beibei exclaimed in a low voice, and she suddenly stopped talking. Poplar Fruit listened carefully, and only heard the sound of her footsteps. After a few seconds, Fong Beibei whispered, I was watching TV with my parents just now, and I spoke a little louder to you, so they looked over. Poplar Fruit's heart tightened, and he quickly asked, Were you found out? No, look at how nervous you are. Fong Beibei covered her mouth and laughed. Now I'm in my room. Tell me, what happened yesterday? I met a group of bastards who specialize in kidnapping children. Poplar Fruit was still a little angry when he thought about what happened yesterday, and he told Fong Beibei what happened. That was so dangerous. Fong Beibei said with some fear. Fortunately, you took Kiki back. If Kiki was kidnapped by them, just thinking about it makes me sad. What happened to Kiki later? Fong Beibei's tone revealed deep concern. Is she okay? Poplar Fruit's heart warmed. He was a little unhappy when he recalled the thrilling experience, but now the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of an imperceptible smile. Her mood is a lot more stable today. I took her to ride the bicycle to see the scenery of Yangshuo, and she smiled the whole day. That must be because you didn't take good care of her. Fong Beibei criticized. Why did you ride the bicycle? Don't you know that the wind is very strong in the mountains? There's no place to hide when it rains. Look, Kiki caught a cold from the wind. Yes, it's my fault. Poplar Fruit modestly accepted Fong Beibei's criticism. I didn't go out with my friends tonight, so I stayed in the inn with Kiki. She's asleep now. That's what you should do. You're a father now, so why do you always want to go out to play? Fong Beibei pouted and said, Also, you still want to go out to play in the middle of the night. Are you looking for a romantic encounter? Poplar Fruit was stunned. What was wrong with today? Both of the girls on the phone sounded so sour. However, compared to his previous reaction to Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit felt a sense of joy from the bottom of his heart. How could that be? Poplar Fruit complained. At most, I'll go out to watch a performance. How could I have a romantic encounter? Besides, who would fancy an uncle like me who has a family to feed? It's good that you know you're an uncle. Fong Beibei seemed to be very satisfied with Poplar Fruit's answer. She said in a light tone. As a father, a man shouldn't be so playful. Definitely not. Poplar Fruit said seriously. All this time, I've only been playful with you. How is that a lot? I can't either. Fong Beibei said angrily. I'm not talking to you anymore. I want to read and do exercises. Fong Beibei subconsciously wanted to hide when their relationship was mentioned. Poplar Fruit already knew, but he was very considerate and said gently, Okay, you should rest early. Hearing Fong Beibei hang up the phone, Poplar Fruit put his phone away. This time he wasn't in a hurry to go back. Instead, he leaned against the railing of the balcony and quietly looked at the city's night sky. Today he only sent a text message to Fong Beibei and didn't call. He didn't expect that Fong Beibei would call him because she was worried about Kiki's situation. This action made Poplar Fruit feel warm in his heart. It seemed that after a heavy rain, the sky seemed to have been wiped clean. There wasn't a single cloud in the sky, revealing the bright galaxy. He had lived in Yangcheng for a long time, and it had been a long time since he saw such a beautiful night sky. Poplar Fruit looked at the night sky in a daze. It seemed that the twinkling stars combined to form Fong Beibei's appearance. From when they first met until now, every stage was like a slideshow. It's so beautiful, Poplar Fruit said softly. He didn't know if he was talking about the stars or the people. Chapter 458. After the call, Poplar Fruit didn't feel sleepy at all when he returned to his room. His mind was filled with Fong Beibei's every frown and smile. He didn't want to be a translator. Since he was traveling, he had to act like he was traveling. Thus, Poplar Fruit started to play with Weibo. He posted a picture of Yangshuo's starry sky and scrolled through the comments. When he saw someone mention him on Weibo, Poplar Fruit remembered that he had told the netizens that Kiki would make a cameo appearance in the short movie. Now that unexpectedly had been released, he hadn't answered everyone's doubts. A few attentive netizens had already noticed when they watched unexpectedly. Poplar Fruit finally posted a new Weibo with a screenshot and a few photos from the set. His Weibo was now one of the gathering places for Kiki's fans. The second was Kiki's Tieba. After Poplar Fruit posted on Weibo, there were hundreds of replies and reposts in just a few minutes. On the other hand, his Weibo post, the picture of the starry sky, was in stark contrast to the heated discussions. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. Other than envy and jealousy, he didn't know what to say. As he played, the door suddenly opened. Poplar Fruit sensed it and looked up. He saw Song Jiwen tiptoeing in with something. "Are you asleep?" Song Jiwen lowered his voice and asked. Poplar Fruit nodded. Then Song Jiwen pulled him to the balcony to talk. "What did you buy?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "Aren't you going to watch the show?" "AI, don't mention it," Song Jiwen said gloomily. "I went over to take a look. The notice said that it was raining and the show was cancelled." "Ah, it's raining over there? I didn't see a single drop of rain here," Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "It didn't rain. Just because it rained for a while in the afternoon, they quit." Song Jiwen shook his head. "After that, I went to West Street for a walk. The bars there are very ethnic, but there are more foreigners. I bought a few zhuang embroidered aprons. They are very beautiful. Do you want them?" Song Jiwen rummaged through the things he had brought back. Finally, he took out a small plastic bottle and said, "By the way, I heard that the cold tea here is quite effective. I also bought a small bottle. Do you want to let Kiki try it?" Sometimes, folk recipes were very effective in treating some minor ailments. Hearing Song Jiwen's words, Poplar Fruit was quite tempted. However, after thinking about it, he shook his head and said, "Forget it, let's not wake her up. Besides, we don't even know what's in it. Who knows if it's suitable for children? It shouldn't be a problem. I've asked. Both adults and children can drink it." Song Jiwen's answer was a little hesitant, but in the end he put it down. "I'll listen to you. Kiki is indeed a little small. Take a look." Song Jiwen suddenly took out a large plastic bag and said, "I also bought field snail wine. It's the most famous local delicacy here. Let's eat field snails and drink a little wine today." Song Jiwen first took out a large plastic box and opened it. There were at least 3 pounds of fried field snails inside. The field snails here were different from the ones Poplar Fruit had eaten when he was a child. Each of them was almost the size of a thumb. As soon as the plastic box was opened, the rich smell of spicy sauce rushed out. "Did you forget? I don't drink." Poplar Fruit looked at Song Jiwen taking out 3 bottles of beer and laughed. "I didn't forget. Otherwise, why would I only bring back 3? Song Jiwen waved and said. Indeed, 3 bottles of beer were not even enough to fill the gaps between Song Jiwen's teeth. "Here's yours." Song Jiwen fished again and took out a bottle of apple cider vinegar. "God pity you. After you quit drinking, you can only drink this sissy drink. Go to hell." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Song Jiwen's teasing. "Sissy, that was also your choice. In a strange city, in a strange environment under the starry sky." Clang. Poplar Fruit clinked the bottle of apple cider vinegar with Song Jiwen's beer. The two of them began to eat. "Mosquito, how long has it been since we brothers drank and chatted like this?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. 1 year, and more than 3 months. Song Jiwen calculated for a moment and said angrily, "Since you have a daughter, you no longer put your brothers in your eyes. You value women over friends." Haha. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "You still want to compare yourself with Kiki? Impossible, no one can replace Kiki's position in my heart." Poplar Fruit used his fingers to pinch a large snail, and gently sucked the fresh snail meat and fragrant soup into his mouth. The snail wine here was not as simple as the snail meat inside the shell. Before it was made, the snail meat would be taken out, supplemented with other seasonings, minced meat, and then stuffed back in. Poplar Fruit happily smacked his lips and said, "Delicious." It was so delicious, why didn't Zhonghua on the tip of the tongue list it? Even your junior sister can't? After drinking a few mouthfuls of wine, Song Jiwen winked and asked. Poplar Fruit was stunned. He thought carefully, shook his head and said, "I don't know, at least not now." Although Fong Beibei's position in Poplar Fruit's heart was becoming more and more important, it still could not shake Kiki's position. If Kiki was described as an indispensable right hand for right-handed people, then Fong Beibei was gradually becoming Poplar Fruit's left hand. The right hand was where the heart was. Not only Kiki needed a father, but Poplar Fruit also needed Kiki to support his life. Fong Beibei represented the left hand. It was not as important as the right hand, but if he really gave it up, it would be painful and regretful. Then here's the question. Song Jiwen said with a smile. If your junior sister and Kiki fell into the water at the same time, who would you save first? Hearing this common question, Poplar Fruit was stunned. Don't say that your junior sister can swim because she's from Higashiyama University, Song Jiwen said before Poplar Fruit could speak. Poplar Fruit smiled. They had played this joke many times in school. Higashiyama University's swimming test was the nightmare of all students who couldn't swim. I think, Poplar Fruit thought carefully and said, no matter who I choose, she will push me to Kiki's side. Song Jiwen had never heard such an answer. He was stunned for a while, then raised the bottle and took 2 big gulps. He smiled and said, I finally understand why you like your junior sister so much. TSK, Xueqing's loss was not unjust. Poplar Fruit smiled and did not refute. Song Jiwen's words were indeed one of the reasons, but it was not the most important deciding factor. After thinking about it for more than a month, Poplar Fruit finally understood Fong Beibei's problem. He liked Fong Beibei because of Kiki, but as time passed his liking turned into love because of Fong Beibei's kindness and innocence. It was also because of love that he gradually became infatuated with the time he spent with Fong Beibei. It was the feeling of home. For a single man who was tired of taking care of Kiki every day, this was even more intoxicating than a life of luxury. Chapter 459. You're always talking about me. It's time to talk about yourself. Poplar Fruit laughed. How come you still haven't recovered after half a year? Is this still the free and easy Song Jiwen from before? This topic was very sensitive. Only Poplar Fruit dared to mention it to Song Jiwen. Even his godmother, Lu Suqin, who knew a little about it, had to use Poplar Fruit to tactfully comfort him. Song Jiwen took a big gulp of beer, shook his head, swallowed it, and said, No, I've already figured it out. Then why are you still like this? Poplar Fruit pushed his shoulder and said, If it were the Song Jiwen I know, would you come back to drink with me instead of going to the bar 3 times? He remembered that when they were in school, a few of their gaming friends had gone to Guan City to play. If it weren't for the pure heart Poplar Fruit's refusal, Song Jiwen would have dragged him to wash his feet. Poplar Fruit still remembered that at that time, everyone else was called out by Song Jiwen to play, and he stayed in the hotel alone to watch TV. The walls of the hotel were thin, and the meowing from the room next door made Poplar Fruit unable to sleep all night. The guys who came back in high spirits even teased Poplar Fruit about whether he had gone to have an affair. Wrong. Song Jiwen raised a finger and shook it, saying, It's because I've figured it out that I won't go to the bar to pick up girls. Ha! Poplar Fruit was surprised. What did you figure out? Why did you suddenly change? Do you know what I regret the most? Song Jiwen didn't answer, but asked instead. Regret breaking up with Xiao Yao. Poplar Fruit didn't even think about it, and directly answered. The standard answer to this question was definitely this, because that was what Song Jiwen had said in the past. Poplar Fruit still remembered that for the past few months, whenever Xiao Yao's car accident was brought up, Song Jiwen would cry bitterly and say, It's all my fault. I regret it so much. Why did I break up with her? If I hadn't broken up with her, she wouldn't have died. No. Song Jiwen shook his head. His denial surprised Poplar Fruit. Could there be more to it? When Song Jiwen saw Poplar Fruit's bewildered look, he hesitated for a moment and said, In the past, this was indeed what I regretted the most. But later, I figured it out. It wasn't me who broke up with her that killed Xiao Yao. It was my love at first sight for her. If I didn't guess wrong, your love at first sight refers to a one-night stand, right? Poplar Fruit asked. Yes. Song Jiwen sighed and said, If I hadn't provoked her, she wouldn't have broken up with me. Song Jiwon couldn't finish his sentence. He took another sip of beer. Eat something, don't drink too much. Poplar Fruit pushed the plastic lunchbox containing the field snail wine in front of Song Jiwon and said, "So you have a shadow in your heart and don't dare to provoke girls anymore?" "Not really." Song Jiwon shook his head and said, "After thinking it through, I began to feel that I wasn't interested in those women who used to be so sexy that they made me drool." Poplar Fruit looked at Song Jiwon warily and said, "Huh? Don't tell me that you don't like women anymore?" "Your uncle." Song Jiwon laughed and scolded, "You're the one who's gay, I don't want to mess around anymore." Song Jiwon didn't continue to smile mischievously. He paused and seriously said, "If I find a new girlfriend, I will find a woman who can accompany me for a lifetime, not a few days of passion." Not bad. The prodigal son has turned over a new leaf? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Very good, very good. If Godmother knew, she would be very happy. Although Poplar Fruit didn't care much about other people's values, if his brother could be a little more mature, he would also be happy. "I've been thinking about a problem recently." Song Jiwon ate 2 field snails, then sucked his finger and said, "What problem? Should I marry a person who loves me? Or should I marry a person I love?" Song Jiwon asked. "Why don't you marry a person who loves you and you also love her?" Poplar Fruit said in a tongue twister. "How can it be that easy?" Song Jiwon rolled his eyes and said, "Do you think it's like you and Lu Yunran, that you can find a random person and stick to her knees like glue?" "I'm sorry." Song Jiwon also realized that he said the wrong thing after drinking, so he said in a low voice, "It's okay, her page is over." Poplar Fruit waved his hand. In fact, it wasn't as good as Poplar Fruit said. When Song Jiwon mentioned Lu Yunran, Poplar Fruit's heart was still pricked. The beauty of first love was not something that could be easily forgotten. But now that Lu Yunran was married, and he also had a woman he loved, it was only a little fluctuation, and it wouldn't affect Poplar Fruit's current mood. "That's what I meant." Song Jiwon shook his head and said, "In the unit, it's not that my daughter doesn't have a good impression of me, but they aren't the people I love or the people who love me." Poplar Fruit nodded gently. He knew that Song Jiwon wasn't saying this to show off. Song Jiwon was handsome and had a bright future. He became a section chief at such a young age. Song Jiwon indeed had the capital, but as he said, it was only a good impression. It was still far from the high standard of love. "This problem will always be faced," Song Jiwon said. "Just like Xiaoyao, she loves me, but I don't really love her. If I meet such a woman in the future, I don't know how to choose." Poplar Fruit said quietly in his heart, "I'm afraid you already know how to choose, right?" Because of Xiaoyao, Song Jiwon probably wouldn't be able to harden his heart and refuse such a woman when he met her again. Shaking his head, Poplar Fruit said, "No matter what, listen to your heart when you choose. If you really don't like her, why should you accept a forced happiness?" "You're right." Song Jiwon smiled and said, "That's why I'm quite scared now. I must be very careful when looking for a girlfriend." "You must find a woman you love who also loves you." Poplar Fruit smiled and clinked the bottle with him. He drank a mouthful of vinegar as if he was really drinking wine. "If I really meet a woman I love who also loves me, I will cherish her with all my heart." Song Jiwon was drunk even though he wasn't drunk. He picked up the bottle and stood up, shouting loudly outside the balcony, "Cherish, cherish. You too. Laogua." Song Jiwon staggered back to his seat, pointed at Poplar Fruit, who was smiling at him and said seriously, "If you meet such a girl, don't let her down. Because you don't know how many times you brushed shoulders with her in your previous life to have the happiness of this life. If you hurt her, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Really, believe me." "I know." Poplar Fruit listened to Song Jiwon's advice after drinking, but nodded seriously. Chapter 460. Last night, after helping the drunk Song Jiwon back to bed, Poplar Fruit sat on the chair on the balcony and thought quietly for a long time. "The woman I love also loves me." Yonggua's mind flashed with a lot of scenes that she treasured in her memory. At first it was Lu Yunran. It was very brief, but in the end, She rushed down the stairs and made Poplar Fruit's heart tighten. Then it was Zheng Yujia. Poplar Fruit did not know why she jumped out. Poplar Fruit should have classified her as a good friend. For a long time after that, the flashing images were of Fang Beibei. Although Yang Guo was dull, he wasn't stupid. He could feel that after getting along with Fang Beibei for nearly a year, it wasn't as if Fang Beibei didn't have any feelings for him. Moreover, the feelings between the two of them continued to heat up. The most frequent images were of him and Fang Beibei standing against the wall in the rain. Her wet bangs were tightly stuck to her smooth forehead. Her long eyelashes were trembling slightly. Her clear and bright eyes revealed shyness. Her white and delicate face was dotted with 2 blushes. She looked like a fairy dancing in the rain. It was not just the images. Fang Beibei's pleasant smell, like a green apple, seemed to linger at the tip of his nose. Because they were close, Fang Beibei could clearly feel his feelings for her. If she did not feel anything, why would she take the initiative to hug him in the end? Poplar Fruit looked at the sky. Compared to Song Jiwen, he should really thank God for being able to meet such a girl who loved him, and even Kiki. Song Jiwen's words seemed to be echoing in his ears. If you hurt her, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Yes, there was no need to be struck by lightning. He probably would not forgive himself, right? At night, Poplar Fruit slept the last, but in the morning, Poplar Fruit was the first to wake up. Next was Kiki, and last was Song Jiwen. Kiki was in good spirits today. She recovered after a night's sleep. Early in the morning, she hugged Gold and rolled around on the bed in the inn. Poplar Fruit thought that it was time to check out anyway, so he didn't drive the 2 little guys out. Not much. Your alcohol tolerance has also decreased. Poplar Fruit looked at Song Jiwen's messy hair and laughed. Don't you know that? Song Jiwen rubbed his eyes and went into the bathroom. He actually pushed the problem to the fact that he was not acclimatized. His phone suddenly vibrated. Poplar Fruit, who was folding Kiki's underwear, opened his pocket and took a look. Is Kiki feeling better? The sender was Fang Beibei. Yang Guo only felt a warmth in his chest, and the corner of his mouth slightly revealed a smile. Putting down the clothes in his right hand, Yang Guo replied, I'm almost healed, you have to take care of yourself too. When Song Jiwen came out of the shower, Poplar Fruit also packed up. The 2 checked out and drove to eat Gillen rice noodles. Of course, this place's most famous gui ling cream was included. What about the car? Song Jiwen proposed to take a bamboo raft to Li River. Poplar Fruit asked, Are we going back to Yangshuo to drive? The car will be consigned by a large ship. We will take the bamboo raft and pick up the car at the dock. Song Jiwen explained. Will it work? Poplar Fruit asked, puzzled. Why didn't I see this in your plan? Song Jiwen laughed and said, I heard it from someone when I was shopping on West Street yesterday. In the end, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen were stubborn. They handed the car, which was worth more than 1,000,000 yuan, to an unfamiliar ship, although it was insured. Then they went to the bamboo raft at Xingping. It was more than 4 hours of water from Yangshuo to Gillen. Fortunately, they came early. Before 9 o'clock in the morning, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen sat on the bamboo raft and slowly set off. Usually people would start from Gillen. However, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen did the opposite. Xingping to Yangdi could be said to be the classic of classics. Therefore, they saw the most beautiful section of water from the very beginning. First was Yuanbao Mountain. Poplar Fruit took out 20 yuan and looked at it. Although the angle was not right, Kiki looked as if she had discovered a new continent. She shouted happily in her father's arms, Papa, Papa, the mountain is out, the mountain is out. Next was the yellow waterfall reflection and 9 horses painted mountain. There were no horses in 9 horses painted mountain. Even the shape of a horse could be imagined. It was 9 mountain peaks connected together. However, although the mountain range was not high, it was like a different great wall that stretched across the water. It was magnificent and not inferior in any way. This should be 8 immortals crossing the river. Next is Jilung Mountain. Song Jiwen excitedly pointed at his little notebook. The bamboo raft master was tired from singing and did not explain. Song Jiwen became their tour guide. Poplar Fruit smiled as he hugged his daughter and sat on a small stool on the bamboo raft. The beautiful scenery along the way was overwhelming. He was reluctant to take out his camera to take pictures. How could he care about looking at his notebook from time to time like Song Jiwen? Goldie did not understand the customs of the world. After it got on the bamboo raft, it crawled beside Poplar Fruit's feet and stopped moving. On the other hand, Kiki was in high spirits. She sang along with the bamboo raft master for a while, and yelled along with Uncle Mosquito. She did not feel tired at all. Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen were very lucky. They encountered rain again during this journey. It was a bit awkward to say that it was a lucky thing to encounter rain, but it was true. Unlike yesterday, they had a canopy on the bamboo raft that was pulled up by the bamboo raft master. They could also appreciate the beauty of Li River, which was different from a sunny day. In this kind of light rain that was like the fluttering catkins, the scenery of the Li River was unpredictable and sublimated. Especially the grassland way, which was shrouded in misty rain. The shield-like peaks were like thick wolf bristles, sprinkling light dots of ink and spreading out a poetic picture. The rich dark green color spread out, floating into the sky and sinking into the water. It blended with the surroundings into a mass of chaos, forming a strange scenery. It was not necessarily a good thing that the scenery in front was too spectacular. After passing the Dawei, the rain stopped, and the slightly long waterway behind them seemed ordinary. Although Gillen's Elephant Trunk Mountain and Reed Flute Rock were also good scenery, compared to the wonders in Yangshuo, they lacked a bit of charm. No wonder there was a saying, Gillen's mountains and waters are the best in the world, while Yangshuo's mountains and waters are the best in Gillen. Kiki was the same. She seemed to have exhausted all her energy by yelling at the beginning. Later on, she lay in her father's arms and slept without interest. Gillen was not completely useless. After getting ashore, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen took the car and went straight to the central square of Gillen, where there was the most delicious food. Gui cuisine was not one of the 4 major cuisines, nor was it one of the 8 major cuisines. Some of the delicacies in Gillen could not even be considered as Gui cuisine. But this was not important, because the local delicacies in Gillen were not inferior to those in the big cities. Lotus leaf duck, steamed pork patties with water chestnuts, and steamed pork with taro and lipu. Poplar Fruit and the others had limited time and stomach, so they only had a few of the most famous dishes. But it was already enough to make them praise each other. After eating the slightly fatty pork and drinking a mouthful of the fragrant oiled tea, this kind of enjoyment was simply comparable to that of the gods. Poplar Fruit and the others did not care about their full stomachs. They ran to a roadside stall and ordered a bowl of snail rice noodles that had been on a bite of china. The tough and sticky snail rice noodles were paired with the delicious soup head and smooth sour bamboo shoots. Slurp, 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 the big bowl was empty. But when they left, their stomachs were so full that walking was a problem. Chapter 461. From western Guangdong Province to Kaiyun Province, they had to pass through Guishan Province. Originally, Yang Guo and the others planned to play in Guishan Province for 2 days. One day was to travel, and the other day was to eat local delicacies. However, because they were delayed by a day in Guangdong Province, they could only bear the pain and reduce the itinerary to 1 day. That night, they set off overnight. Poplar Fruit hurriedly bought some Gillen specialty glutinous rice cakes and snacks, and sent them home by express delivery. Then they didn't even stay in the hotel and drove away. Guishan Province lived up to its name. It was really a place densely covered with mountains and forests. Yang Guo still remembered that when she was studying liberal arts in high school, her geography teacher had said, Guishan Province has 4 basic types of terrain: plateau, mountain, hill, and basin. Plateau and mountain are the majority. It is said that 8 mountains, 1 water, 1 field. It is the only province in the country that does not have plains. Even after dawn, Poplar Fruit didn't dare to deviate from the highway, because even the highway had to be paved with mountains and rivers, and there were no stops along the way, not to mention other remote paths. If he was greedy for convenience, it might be even more troublesome. Looking out of the window, the winding mountain road spiraled up Daqing Mountain. Where are we? After dawn, Song Jiwen, who didn't sleep well because of the bumpy night, got up in a daze and looked out of the window. I don't know, more than an hour after the provincial capital. The GPS says there are still more than 100 kilometers. Poplar Fruit focused on driving and answered casually. Suddenly, Chi-Chi's long nasal voice rang out in the car. Song Ji-wen turned his head to look, and found that the little fellow's eyelids were wrinkled. She twisted her body that was bound by the seatbelt, and even kicked her little feet. Close the curtains, the sun is too bright, Kiki can't sleep. Poplar Fruit looked at the rearview mirror and instructed. Also, keep your voice down, didn't you see that the quilt is about to fall to the ground? Let me drive. Song Ji-wen reached out and pulled back the curtains that he had opened when he woke up. For the trip, Poplar Fruit had specially installed it. Kiki slowly calmed down. Her mouth pouted, and her breathing gradually returned to normal. It's fine. You just woke up. Take a rest. Poplar Fruit didn't dare to let the sleepy Song Ji-wen drive the car. Who knew if he would fall asleep while driving? Aren't you tired? Song Ji-wen looked at Poplar Fruit's bright eyes through the rearview mirror and asked curiously. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Fortunately, I slept for 2 hours yesterday. In fact, 2 hours wasn't enough. Poplar Fruit drove until the middle of the night and felt a little sleepy, so he used his internal strength to adjust. He didn't expect the effect to be good. He was still energetic and didn't feel sore. Song Ji-wen couldn't do it. The reason why he changed drivers so early yesterday was that his whole body was sore. He usually sat in the office and lived like a prince, but after 2 days of traveling, he showed his true colors. What a weirdo. Song Ji-wen shook his head. He lay back in the back seat, yawned, and half closed his eyes to recover his energy. Do you know how many freeways I changed yesterday? Poplar Fruit saw that Song Ji-wen wasn't sleeping, so he smiled and asked in a low voice. 3? I changed all of them, Song Ji-wen said. Including yours, and now I've changed 6. Poplar Fruit said. Isn't it scary? Otherwise, why would the meeting take so long? When the sky was completely bright and Kiki woke up, Poplar Fruit finally arrived at Huangguashu Waterfall. Don't let the dog in. Poplar Fruit almost flew into a rage when he heard the staff stop them. My Goldie is a golden retriever. It never bites people, except for the time when it saved Kiki. You don't let it in? I said that the dog can't go in, so it can't go in. Isn't it just a dog? What nonsense are you talking about? The gatekeeper of the scenic area was very arrogant, as if he was sitting at the door. He said impatiently, Come if you want, don't block the way. Next. What do you mean it's not a dog? If it was a kind advice, Poplar Fruit could accept it. However, the gatekeeper didn't even want to explain. He waved his hand like he was driving away a fly. This attitude made Poplar Fruit furious. However, Poplar Fruit didn't want to have a conflict with him in public. He glared at the gatekeeper and turned to leave. Let's go somewhere else to play. Song Ji-wen followed behind Poplar Fruit. He patted Goldie's back and said to Poplar Fruit, Fuck, I've never seen such a person. The administrator of the scenic area let such an idiot guard the door. Is his brain fried? No. Poplar Fruit said softly. He shook his head and said, I have to play here today. How do we get in? Song Ji-wen said excitedly. Let's force our way in. Is your brain fried? Poplar Fruit asked speechlessly. What if you get caught trying to force your way in? You're a sector-level civil servant. Why are you still so fearless? Hee, although the mechanism is good, it will never erase my courage. Song Ji-wen licked his lips and said. Just like when he was playing CF, he always held the AK-47 and charged at the front. Even if he was surrounded by people, he would still kill to his heart's content. Shaking his head, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. No, you're thinking too much. Later, you carry Kiki in first. Buy the ticket and go through the gate. Poplar Fruit patted Kiki's back and said. No, Kiki doesn't want to leave Papa. Kiki shook her head like a rattledrum and said with a pout. Kiki, you're only with Uncle Mosquito. Go in first, Papa will come in soon. Poplar Fruit comforted. If you don't follow Uncle Mosquito, Goldie won't be able to get in. Look, Goldie is so pitiful. Poplar Fruit squatted down, pointed at Goldie and Kiki and said. Goldie sat on his hind legs and stuck out its tongue. It didn't know what its owners were discussing. It just stared at them with its big eyes and innocently looked at them. It really looked pitiful. Kiki hesitated for a moment. Her feelings for Goldie gradually took the upper hand. She suppressed the fear of leaving Papa's side, pouted her little mouth, and reluctantly nodded. Yes, good girl, Papa's good girl. Poplar Fruit smiled and kissed Kiki's face. Although he didn't know what Poplar Fruit was going to do, Song Jiwen pulled Kiki and asked, "Where are we going to meet later?" "Do you see there?" Poplar Fruit pointed to a wall with a big banyan tree in the distance. It was more than 500 meters away from the gate. There were no cameras, only a guard patrolling nearby. However, the guard lazily leaned against the wall and closed his eyes to rest. It shouldn't be difficult to break through. "You're going to climb the tree? It's a bit far," Song Jiwen said with a frown. "It's not climbing a tree. You'll know later." Poplar Fruit patted his shoulder and said, "After you go in that direction. I'll be there soon." Chapter 462. Be careful. Song Jiwen hesitated for a moment and said, "If it doesn't work, let's go somewhere else to play." "It's okay. I have to bring Goldie in today." Ever since Goldie helped Poplar Fruit rescue Kiki from the robbers, Poplar Fruit had upgraded Goldie's status from a pet to a family member. Since Goldie was a family member, he couldn't tolerate other people insulting his family. The arrogant gatekeeper had completely touched Poplar Fruit's reverse scale. Even if he had to risk being caught, he had to go against the rules. "Papa." Under Song Jiwen's pull, Kiki slowly lost her grip on her father's finger. The moment she let go, her bright eyes were covered with a layer of hazy mist, but she still held it back and said with a choked voice, "Papa, hurry up and pick up Kiki." Poplar Fruit stretched out his right pinky and said with a smile, "Of course, after Kiki goes in, she will be able to see Papa as soon as she turns around." "Come, Papa," and Kiki pinky swear. Papa promises to immediately appear in front of Kiki. Okay. Kiki nodded her little head and pinky swear with her father. After that, her mood improved a lot. She told Goldie to listen to her father, and then let Song Jiwen carry her to the gate. While they were still waiting in line, Poplar Fruit squatted down, patted Goldie's head, and said, "Come, Goldie, I'll have to trouble you to hide in the bag for a while." Poplar Fruit opened the travel bag that he took out from the car, and Goldie skillfully jumped in. In Yangcheng, when Goldie was young, Poplar Fruit often took it out like this, so when Poplar Fruit pointed at the bag's pocket, Goldie understood its master's intention. However, Gold was too big to fit into a backpack. It had already curled up, but its head was still sticking out. Knowing that this would happen, the Poplar Fruit did not continue to push Goldie in. He closed the zipper, leaving only a small opening that was just big enough to fit Goldie's neck. "Shoo, don't shout." Poplar Fruit made a gesture to Goldie. He knew that the intelligent Goldie would understand. At this time, Song Jiwen and Kiki also arrived at the entrance. They successfully bought tickets and went in. Yangguo watched their figures walk in before she calmly walked in the direction of the great banyan tree. The patrolling security guard had his back to him and kept yawning. He didn't see anyone walking past him. Even if he did, he probably wouldn't care because tourists walking around were too common. Hiding behind the banyan tree, Poplar Fruit looked around to make sure that no one had noticed him. He took a deep breath and the internal energy in his dantian flowed out, splitting into two and flowing into his legs. "It's starting." Poplar Fruit patted the backpack on his back and lightly kicked the ground. Then his whole body jumped out like an antelope. One step, 2 steps, he arrived in front of the wall in an instant. Almost without making a sound, Yangguo kicked off the ground with his front legs and his whole body shot up from the ground. With his jumping ability, carrying Goldie 1.5 meters was his limit. But just as his body was about to stop in the air, he suddenly tiptoed lightly on the relief sculpture on the wall. The relief on the wall of the scenic area wasn't very beautiful. The strange beasts looked very strange, but their carving skills weren't low. The edges were polished very smooth. If it was someone else, they probably wouldn't even be able to put their feet on it, let alone step on it. But Poplar Fruit's light tap just happened to be in the middle of the relief's edge. It didn't slip, but his whole body rose another 0.5 meter. It wasn't over yet. Poplar Fruit's ape arms stretched out. His 2 hands were like suction cups, holding the edge of the wall at the very top. He pulled his center of gravity back from the relief. Without stopping, he let go of his left hand and turned around with his right hand as the axis. When his left hand grabbed the edge of the wall again, Poplar Fruit's back was already facing the wall. With a spurt of energy, he lightly shook his arm and flipped himself up. Because he was worried that Goldie would fall, Poplar Fruit's flipping movement was very clean. In less than a second, he grabbed the edge of the wall and flipped over. His 2 legs stood firmly next to his hands. His body folded, standing straight without swaying. Because of the sharp glass in the middle of the wall, Poplar Fruit was very careful. His hands and feet were on the edge of the wall. If he took another step forward, he would be cut. Going up was a bit strenuous, but going down was much easier. Poplar Fruit jumped, and his body stretched out like a rock spreading its wings. The way he jumped down was even a bit unscientific. He didn't rely on any equipment at all to achieve the effect of gliding. Poplar Fruit gently flew out like a paper airplane, and then gently landed on the grass. Poplar Fruit jumped down from the wall, which was more than 4 meters high, without any recoil, which was really amazing. Moreover, the process of going up and coming down was too fast. It was like riding a roller coaster. Even Goldie was dazzled. Before it could figure it out, it was dizzily carried out of the backpack by its master. Shaking its head, Goldie finally woke up. It wagged its tail and eagerly followed its master. Walking on the road, Poplar Fruit smiled and walked to Song Jiwen and Kiki, who just came over. "Papa! Papa!" Kiki's eyes were sharp. When Poplar Fruit just came out of the woods, she saw him. She excitedly struggled out of Uncle Mosquito's arms and happily ran to her father. "Haha, Kiki." Poplar Fruit smiled and picked up Kiki and said, "How is it? Papa didn't lie to you, right? You see your father in the blink of an eye." Kiki coquettishly called, and her small head twisted in her father's neck. "How can you be so fast?" Song Jiwen came over and said in surprise, How many minutes has it been?" Hey. Poplar Fruit just smiled and didn't explain, just to keep him in suspense. Song Jiwen, like Goldie, circled around Poplar Fruit. When he heard Poplar Fruit's words, he said strangely, "I'm looking at you. Did you learn how to pass through walls? I can't even walk faster than you through the gate." Haha. Poplar Fruit laughed, and then told him how he came in. After successfully letting Goldie in, his depressed mood was now cheerful. Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen followed the tourists in the direction of the waterfall. In fact, Huangguashu Waterfall was very beautiful. Its reputation as the #1 waterfall in the country was not exaggerated. Although because of the lack of water, it lacked the majestic momentum of the river pouring down, but the posture of unrolled bead curtains and hanging silk from distant peaks was still the most beautiful in the world. Approaching the observation deck of Rhinoceros Lake, the mist rolled up by the waterfall scattered circles of beautiful rainbows under the noon sun, which made people intoxicated. Chapter 463. Although the story is about travel, Xiaohan tried to shorten the unnecessary descriptions of the scenic spots. Don't think that the rest of the plot is just filler, because in this journey, an important character will appear, and a key main plot in the book will emerge. Say, isn't our itinerary too rushed? Song Jiwen sat in the car and asked Poplar Fruit. I feel like we're just passing by. We only visited one scenic spot in the province, and then drove for more than 10 hours. Poplar Fruit shrugged and said, There's nothing we can do. Who told you to have such a short time, so you can only do an essence tour? The route is already set. Next time, we'll have a targeted tour next time. After they saw the Huangguashu waterfall, they hurriedly drove away. Even when the sky just turned dark, they already saw the notice on the road outside the car that they had left Guishan province. Actually, Guishan province has a lot of classic scenic spots. Song Jiwen said with regret. We didn't even go to see Junyi, the important place where Taizu turned over to become a leader. Didn't you say that we were going to the nearby Maotai town to buy Maotai? How did this become such a high-sounding reason? Poplar Fruit turned to look at Song Jiwen, who was driving, and laughed. Hee, it's convenient. Song Jiwen laughed. Looking at the scenery outside the window, Poplar Fruit looked back at the place where the mountains and rivers would always meet. For some reason, he always felt that he would come back. Perhaps the regret left behind was an indication of his future return. Who knows? When they arrived at Cayenne Province, according to Poplar Fruit's plan, they would play in Kunming for a day, then Dali for a day, and then Lijiang and Shangri-La for a day. Finally, they would go straight to Chuan Province. Poplar Fruit didn't expect it to be so fast. They arrived at Kunming at night. Coincidentally, he could stroll around the night view of Kunming City at night. Then he could spend the day in the scenic area. No wonder it was called the City of Spring. Kunming's climate was always so comfortable. Even though it was a hot summer day, after getting off the car, Poplar Fruit could feel the cool breeze blowing on his face like a spring breeze. They parked the car at the hotel they booked online. It was not easy to find a hotel that allowed dogs to stay. After changing into comfortable clothes, Poplar Fruit held Kiki and Goldie and went out. Poplar Fruit was wearing jeans, canvas shoes, and a light blue linen shirt. If it wasn't for the daughter he was carrying, people would probably think that he was a youthful college student. He gave Kiki an embroidered dress with a girdle. After taking a shower, her long hair was separated into 2 strands and hung in front of her chest. Her delicate little face looked like a pocket-sized version of a little beauty. Song Jiwen, on the other hand, was wearing beach shorts and a tight-fitting short-sleeved t-shirt. He wore a slanted white top hat. He looked like a mixture of fashion and laziness, but it didn't contradict him, and was very pleasing to the eye. He wore a pair of sunglasses and even forced Poplar Fruit to wear one too. He wasn't worried at all that wearing sunglasses in the dark would cause him to bump into a tree. When they went out, Poplar Fruit even teased Song Jiwen. "You're dressed so flirtatiously today. Don't tell me you're having a crush on her again?" In the past, Song Jiwen often dressed like a playboy and went to bars. Poplar Fruit knew this habit of his like the back of his hand. Dressing handsome is an attitude towards life. If you're handsome, then you have to show it off. Other people can't show it off even if they want to, right? How can you recklessly waste a gift from God? Song Jiwen boasted shamelessly. Besides, who knows what will happen next? Spring City, maybe my spring is in this city. He was very casual when talking to Poplar Fruit. The two of them often bragged and talked nonsense, so it was normal for such words to appear. He knew that Song Jiwen was just making things up. That day, he said that he wanted to find a girlfriend with marriage as his goal. Poplar Fruit didn't believe that he would go back today to hook up with the beauties of Kunming. Poplar Fruit smiled and asked the little beauty Kiki sitting on his arm, "Kiki, do you think Daddy is handsome or Uncle Mosquito is handsome?" "Daddy is handsome." Kiki didn't even think about it and blurted out the answer. "That's not fair," Song Jiwen said indignantly. "Your daughter will definitely say that you're handsome. Why don't we walk on the streets and see who gets the most attention?" Poplar Fruit obviously wouldn't compare with him. Poplar Fruit knew his own limitations. Although Poplar Fruit had a pair of invincible long legs and was very good-looking, in terms of appearance, Song Jiwen, who had inherited excellent genes, was definitely better than Poplar Fruit. Besides, Song Jiwen wasn't short. In the South, he was considered average. Of course, what made Poplar Fruit feel the most guilty was Kiki, the X factor. No matter how handsome a man was, only a single man could attract the attention of a girl. A man with a child, no matter if he was handsome like Hua Zai or ordinary like Xing Yi, was only a father in the eyes of others. While the two of them were arguing, they had already arrived at Kunming's Golden Jade Square. This was considered the most prosperous downtown area in Kunming. The Golden Horse and Blue Chicken Lane next to it was the symbol and pride of Kunming. There was no need to talk about the history. The Golden Horse and Blue Chicken Lane today was even more outstanding. The bright lights intersected, and the magnificent appearance left a deep impression on people. It could be said that the archway at night was even more charming than during the day. Poplar Fruit and the rest couldn't find an empty spot to take a picture. In the end, they could only take a picture with the crowd from afar. Other than Kiki, no one else had eaten dinner. It was good that they could play and forage for food. Neither of them were left behind. In the vicinity of this square, not only were there all kinds of department stores and entertainment venues, There were also many snack stalls, hiding in the alleys like gorillas. Although it wasn't as diverse as the North Gate, there were specialties of 26 ethnic groups. The taste of the snacks here was still considered authentic. It also allowed poplar fruit and the rest to have a taste of the rosy clouds. Tachibana glutinous rice balls, rose cold cake, Yushi-style pea powder, ice beef, poplar fruit, and the rest didn't have any taboos. As long as it was delicious, they would eat it. Unfortunately, Kiki could only watch helplessly. Kiki swallowed her saliva a few times, and it even flowed out. However, poplar fruit didn't dare to let her eat these roadside stalls. They didn't even know if it was hygienic. It was fine for adults, but children's bodies were weaker, and it was easy for them to have diarrhea. Poplar fruit and Song Jiwen played until 11 o'clock before returning home. Kiki had already fallen asleep on her father's shoulder. Sitting in the subway, poplar fruit softly mocked Song Jiwen. "Hey, your charm has dropped. No pretty girls came to hit on you today. Isn't that because you're next to me?" Song Jiwen rolled his eyes and said, "Didn't you see the gazes of the people on the bar street? They all thought we were gay. You still blame me for dragging you down." Poplar fruit laughed. No matter what, on the first day in Spring City, Song Jiwen seemed to have bragged too much. Chapter 464. After going on a trip, there weren't many nights where he could comfortably lie in bed and scroll through Weibo. These days, poplar fruit was either sleeping with Kiki or driving. Other than the night in Yangshuo, tonight was the second night. After wandering around Kunming's night market, Song Jiwen was so tired that he didn't even bother to take a shower. He directly threw himself onto the bed to rest. Poplar fruit, on the other hand, was full of energy. He used a wet towel to wipe the sleeping Kiki's face, nose, ears, hands, and feet. After taking a shower, he didn't feel sleepy at all. Thus, he went online to see if there was any news. On Weibo, poplar fruit had a lot of new fans. What was rare was that, for the first time, more than 50% of the new fans weren't Kiki. Seeing that many of the comments were talking about his performance in Unexpectedly, poplar fruit was overjoyed. He really wanted to cry. It was rare to have so many true fans. There were also many fans who found the Weibo of handsome and talented liar uncle. Poplar fruit scratched his head. He didn't know if he should be happy or sad. Everyone remembered his image in the micro-movie, especially in the behind-the-scenes scenes where poplar fruit gestured to the camera. "I can speak 13 foreign languages." This sentence was a little arrogant and boastful. Poplar fruit said it in a cute way, arranged by the crew, who knew how many young girls were attracted to him. This was the benefit of Unexpectedly's popularity. Speaking of which, when they were eating supper at a roadside stall in Kunming's night market, poplar fruit heard a passerby discussing the plot of the micro-movie with his friends. Although poplar fruit wasn't mentioned, he still felt very excited. The official Weibo accounts of Unexpectedly and Wanhatiani also announced the launch of the Unexpectedly online miniseries. Poplar fruit also saw Cinda Translation Company's announcement of additional advertising investment. Of course, poplar fruit was not too surprised. This was something that had happened naturally. Now that the micro-movie had been released for less than a week and had already received close to 10 million views, Shinda would be a fool if they did not strike while the iron was hot. Other than increasing the number of poplar fruit's fans, was there no other effect? Of course there was. The success of Unexpectedly also meant the success of Wanhatiani. Wanha's market value rose along with it, and poplar fruit shares naturally increased as well. However, poplar fruit had no concept of having more than 100,000 RMB. He was a small farmer, and as long as he had enough money to spend, he wouldn't think about how to make more money. He looked at the interesting comments on his computer and laughed, not even thinking about it. Xing Sanhu, who received 2 free advertising slots from Blizzard, didn't stay idle after returning to Beijing. He had already received financial support from poplar fruit and hired a few marketing staff. Before the game was even completed and tested, they had already started planning how to attract attention before the game was even released. Poplar fruit saw a lot of Weibo posts about IMMT. He didn't know how Xing Sanhu managed to find these big influencers, but he didn't really care. This wasn't his job, so there was no point in worrying about it. Not sure if it was because she saw Poplar Fruit was online or because she was bored, but Zheng Yujie actually tapped Poplar Fruit with her QQ. What are you doing? It's the middle of the night. Why are you still on the computer instead of sleeping? Poplar Fruit smiled as he typed. Although Zheng Yujie didn't like beauty sleep like my daughter, Poplar Fruit knew that she had a pretty regular schedule. I couldn't sleep. I worked overtime last night, so I slept the whole day today. Zheng Yujie's reply was filled with resentment. Why are you working so hard? Poplar Fruit asked. There's a new book coming out, so I had to plan for it. Zheng Yujie replied. You're a deputy editor now. You shouldn't always do everything yourself. You need to learn how to delegate power. Poplar Fruit replied with an old-fashioned tone. That's easy for you to say. Zheng Yujie sent an angry emoji with fire coming out of its nostrils. If something goes wrong, won't they blame it on me? Not only do I have little experience, but I'm also lazy. It's a joke. Then you should pay attention to your rest. Poplar Fruit could only comfort her like this. Take it slow, you have to eat one bite at a time. They will change their view of you one day. Let's not talk about this. Where are you today? Zheng Yujie asked. Hey, you found out? Weibo again? Poplar Fruit smiled as he typed. Zheng Yujie replied with an angry emoji. It was strange that they actually chatted with each other using QQ. It should be known that these two people's QQ was basically a decoration except for work. They used to call each other before, but now they could chat so enthusiastically while typing. It was really a miracle. Kuren Ming, I just arrived in the evening and went to the night market. Poplar Fruit said. Did you have any romantic encounters? You men like this kind of thing. Zheng Yujie's reply felt weird no matter how you looked at it. I want to, but when I go out with Kiki on the street, the number of people who turn their heads is basically zero. Alas. Poplar Fruit smiled and sent a sighing emoji. Ha 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 ha. In Beijing, Zheng Yujie laughed heartlessly. She quickly typed. Serves you right, you're already a father-level old man, but you still have feelings everywhere. Poplar Fruit smiled and shook his head. He and Zheng Yujie talked about this topic for a while before talking about the new book they were preparing to launch. What's the situation now? You still remember this book? Zheng Yujie said with some dissatisfaction. I thought you threw the matter to me and forgot about it. Aren't I just concerned about it? Poplar Fruit pretended to be wronged and said, Alas, it's really sad to be misunderstood by you. Pretend you continue to pretend. Zheng Yujie didn't fall for his trick. How could she not know what kind of person Poplar Fruit was after knowing him for almost a year? We've discussed it with Lian. We can start the publicity first. Anyway, they also want to find a topic to let the people pay attention to their movie, Zheng Yujie said. Do you need me to do anything? Poplar Fruit asked. Not for the time being, but we may need to borrow your previous experience as a translator for publicity, Zheng Yujie said. No problem. Also, we'll need to use your 13 foreign languages, haha. Zheng Yujie obviously also remembered the behind-the-scenes clip of Poplar Fruit pretending to be young and cute. At that time, she secretly cut this clip and put it on the computer. She watched it countless times and still felt that she never got tired of it. The usually serious Poplar Fruit's performance was really too rare. A few black lines drooped down from Poplar Fruit's forehead. He sent an emoji of a wooden stool to show that he was speechless. The two of them didn't have anything to do that night. Zheng Yujie couldn't sleep, and Poplar Fruit couldn't sleep yet. The two of them actually typed and chatted until 2 o'clock in the morning. Fortunately, Song Jiwen and Kiki were sleeping soundly and weren't disturbed. Chapter 465. The next day, Poplar Fruit and the others decided to go to the West Mountain. The reason for choosing this place was very simple. Kunming's famous scenic spots were all near the West Mountain. Moreover, it was said that climbing the West Mountain would give one a panoramic view of the entire Kunming. What else could they choose other than the West Mountain? However, when Poplar Fruit and the others checked out in the morning, they didn't go straight to the West Mountain. Instead, they went around the scenic spot near the hotel, Yuantong Temple. Yuantong Temple was built in the Tang Dynasty. It had a history of more than 1,200 years. At that time, Kunming was still not ruled by the Han people. The strange thing about Yuantong Temple was that after entering the mountain gate, they didn't go up the slope. Instead, they went down the central axis. Its main hall, Yuantong Hall, also known as Daxiong Hall, was at the lowest point of the temple. Little Turtle Kiki, who was tugging on her father's trousers, seemed to have discovered something. She suddenly shouted happily, "Papa, Papa, Little Turtle!" The first one to react was Goldie. It looked at the direction Kiki's finger was pointing at. It exerted force with its front legs and stood up like a human. It leaned on the edge of the small pond and looked. What Little Turtle? Poplar Fruit was worried that Goldie would eat the goldfish in the pond. Worrying for nothing. How could a dog eat fish? So he quickly pulled Goldie down. Then he took a look. Hey, it really is a turtle. Song Jiwen shouted out what Poplar Fruit wanted to say. It turned out that the Yuantong Temple's pond didn't have goldfish. Instead, it had several little turtles that were slowly paddling at the bottom of the water. He didn't expect Kiki's observation skills to be so good. Poplar Fruit smiled and turned to look at Kiki. Then he saw Kiki's big sparkling eyes. Poplar Fruit felt that something was wrong. Papa. Kiki pulled on her father's trousers and sweetly said, Kiki wants it too. What do you want? Raising turtles? Poplar Fruit asked speechlessly as his head started to hurt. Let's bring the little turtle home, okay? Please. Chi-Chi hugged her father's leg and raised her head to look at her father with a pitiful expression. Poplar Fruit had a headache just thinking about it. He turned his head and looked around. Fortunately, it was too early and there weren't many tourists nearby. He whispered, No, this is the turtle in the temple. We can't take it away. Kiki wants. Kiki pouted her lips and shook her head. In the end, Poplar Fruit spent a lot of effort to bring Kiki out of the Yuantong Temple. Looking at how she kept looking back, Poplar Fruit wondered if they would have emptied the temple if they had been a little later. However, the little turtle in the Yuantong Temple was really cute. Not only did it counteract the ferocious aura of the 500 arhats in the Hall of Great Strength, but it also brought a sense of vitality to the gloomy temple. There were still side effects. After coming out of the Yuantong Temple, Kiki was in a bad mood. She sat in the car and turned her head away, refusing to talk to her father. This little tantrum lasted until noon. When they arrived at the foot of the West Mountain, Poplar Fruit and the others didn't enter the colorful Clouds ethnic village. After all, it was more interesting here at night. During the day, they could only stroll around the museum. It was better to climb the mountain directly. At the foot of the West Mountain was Dianchi Lake. Poplar Fruit and the others parked the car at the entrance of the park. Because they wanted to see Dianchi Lake, they didn't take the cable car but walked there on foot. Although it was called a lake, in fact, Dianchi Lake was not just a small lake. The longest was almost 40 kilometers. No wonder it was also called Kunming Lake. Dianchi Lake had a beautiful nickname, Pearl of the Plateau. It was the best memory in the hearts of many of the older generation of Kunming people. However, that was only a memory. The current Dianchi Lake was no longer as beautiful as before because of the pollution of the water. However, the wide water surface, with the mountain wind blowing, sparkled under the noon sun. This made Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen feel very comfortable. It was not as boundless as the sea, nor as small as the crescent moon spring, but it won in its mellow and quiet elegance. It was a treasure land in a metropolis. Oh, see, you are all water. Song Jiwen was so excited that he trotted all the way. He opened his arms and shouted at the side of Dianchi Lake. He knew that he had read the wrong poem, but who cares? He couldn't help but be willful. Papa, beautiful sister. Poplar Fruit was still hiding behind Kiki and pretending not to know him. Kiki suddenly pulled his hair to let him see. Poplar Fruit was not surprised because Kiki said something about how beautiful the beautiful sister was. He found that Kiki, who had not spoken before, suddenly took the initiative to talk to him. Poplar Fruit saw Kiki's focused look, and curiously looked in the direction that Kiki's finger was pointing. She was really beautiful. Poplar Fruit saw the girl with the most outstanding temperament in the group at a glance. He didn't know if she was a southerner, but Poplar Fruit felt that she was not the same type as the beauties he had seen before. She had a ponytail and was wearing some loose sportswear, but she was very petite and cute. Her face was also a kind of baby face with a little baby fat. She looked like a high school student, but she shouldn't be, because the group except for her dressed like college students. Probably a class trip of a university? However, she was not the type that Poplar Fruit liked. Damn. Poplar Fruit patted his head and then stared at Kiki, who was eating happily. He knew that this little girl was causing trouble. If she hadn't said beautiful sister, how could Poplar Fruit think of this? He didn't know if she felt Poplar Fruit's gaze, but the cute girl suddenly turned her head. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit reacted quickly and quickly moved his gaze to the opposite lake, so he was not discovered. But he still felt a gaze that was like a knife sweeping across his body. Poplar Fruit felt that something was wrong. He had never seen anyone with such a sharp gaze. However, the girl quickly retracted her gaze. She was pulled by her companions to talk. Poplar Fruit's ears were sharp. He heard the girl and her companions talking about Song Jiwen, who didn't care about his image. That person is so funny. Who does he think he is? Heisey. So stupid. Making a fuss in public. He's already so old, but he's still like a child. Although the girl was petite, her words were not polite at all. Her voice was not deliberately lowered like her companions. Even Song Jiwen heard it. He turned his head and looked at the girl strangely. Even Poplar Fruit and Kiki thought that the girl was beautiful. Song Jiwen's eyes lit up. However, the girl's previous words and the way she stared at Song Jiwen after seeing Song Jiwen sizing her up made Song Jiwen very unhappy. Crackle. Song Jiwen made a strange sound that he didn't even know what it was. He looked at the girl with a provocative gaze and raised his eyebrows. Just as the girl raised her eyebrows and was about to get angry, Song Jiwen had already turned around and walked away. Chapter 466. The girl was about to walk over, but she was stopped by her companion. Song Jiwen did not look back. He walked towards Poplar Fruit and led the way. Poplar Fruit shook his head with a smile and followed him. At noon, the two found a restaurant to eat and prepared to rest for a while before climbing the mountain. As a result, they rested for more than 2 hours. Firstly, the summer afternoon sun was too strong. Poplar Fruit was worried that Kiki would get a heat stroke. Secondly, Kiki did not cooperate and refused to have a proper lunch. Poplar Fruit pestered her for a long time. In the end, Kiki obediently listened. She threw a tantrum for the whole morning. Her father was so sincere that Kiki's anger dissipated. She made up with her father again. Let's take the cable car. Song Jiwen looked at his watch and said weakly, "It's already 3 o'clock. How long will it take to climb the mountain? We can't even reach the top when it's dark." "That's fine." Poplar Fruit smiled indifferently. "Save your energy. We still have to hurry at night." So they went back to the village and took the cable car. Climbing the mountain had its benefits, but taking the cable car also had its benefits. The view from the sky was not covered. When the cable car passed by the lake, the huge Dianchi lake seemed to crawl under their feet. The bright lake was like an uneven mirror, reflecting the light of the sun into a colorful halo. "There's another one." Before coming, Poplar Fruit did not read the news. It turned out that crossing Dianchi Lake was a cable car, and from the west mountain to the top of the mountain was another cable car. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to buy another ticket and continue to climb. Of course, taking the cable car would mean missing a lot of scenic spots such as Nye Air's tomb. Poplar Fruit was excited to see it, but seeing that the afternoon sun was still strong and the endless mountains in the west mountain, Poplar Fruit gave up. However, when he reached the top of the mountain, Poplar Fruit found that all his regrets had disappeared. Nothing could compare to the satisfaction he felt at this moment. It was more than 2,000 meters above sea level, and it lived up to its reputation. Standing at the edge of the observation deck, one could overlook the entire Kunming city. The lush shade of the trees and the fields of blooming wildflowers swayed in the wind. The blue of Dianchi Lake, the green of the mountain peak, and the red of the flowers were clearly separated, but from time to time they mixed together, dazzling people. Kiki gazed into the distance with her father in infatuation. Looking at the undulating mountain range from a high place, it seemed as if her mind had opened up a lot. What she liked the most was this kind of open and wide beautiful scenery. She was not afraid of the height she was currently at. Unlike Goldie, Goldie had acrophobia. When it sat in the cable car, it didn't dare to move. When it was at the top of the mountain, it also obediently lay beside its master's feet. Ah, this little pepper is also following. Poplar Fruit, who was holding the SLR with one hand and shooting the beautiful scenery, heard Song Jiwen whisper next to him. Don't look. Song Jiwen stopped Poplar Fruit from turning his head. Keep a low profile, keep a low profile. Although Poplar Fruit didn't turn his head, he suddenly realized that it must be the girl from Dianchi Lake. After waiting for a while, Poplar Fruit secretly glanced from the corner of his eyes and saw the group of young college students slowly climbing up the mountain path. Although he didn't find the cute girl, she must be in the middle of the crowd. Poplar Fruit laughed and pushed Song Jiwen. Who told you to tease the girl? What? Are you afraid now? I'm not afraid. Song Jiwen raised his head and said stubbornly, I'm afraid that she will ruin our mood. Why don't we go back? After a while, Song Jiwen's mouth squirmed as he whispered. Go back. How many minutes have we been up here? Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes. He didn't want to listen to Song Jiwen. How could they come all the way to Shishan Mountain just to hide from a little girl and go down the mountain without looking carefully? Song Jiwen had to pull Poplar Fruit away from the group of college students. Fortunately, the observation deck was relatively large, and there were many trees and strange rocks. After 2 rounds, they couldn't see them anymore. They didn't know if they went somewhere else to play, or if it was just a coincidence that they didn't meet. However, Poplar Fruit's mood was still ruined by Song Jiwen. He looked at Song Jiwen helplessly. The two of them stayed on the mountain for less than half an hour before they took the cable car down the mountain again. It took almost half an hour to take the cable car up the mountain and down the mountain. When they returned to the ethnic village, it was already 5 o'clock in the evening. Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen had dinner at the previous restaurant. When they were about to take the car and leave Kurenming, they saw a group of people in the middle of the square of the ethnic village. What's the program? Song Jiwen excitedly left Poplar Fruit and went over. Poplar Fruit frowned. He ordered Gold to wait in the car for a while, then he closed the door and walked over to Song Jiwen with Kiki in his arms. Before they got close, Poplar Fruit heard a strong rhythm of hip-hop music. What's going on? Poplar Fruit walked to Song Jiwen's side and saw a large empty space in the middle of the crowd. There was a big stereo playing music. They're having a dance competition, Song Jiwen said happily. Before he finished speaking, a boy with a scarf tied around his neck came down. He waved his hands and kicked his feet to the rhythm of the music. Hip-hop. Poplar Fruit's interest was piqued. Although he had never learned how to dance, he had always liked watching street dances. Poplar Fruit had watched the horse pole street dance that was popular on the internet a few months ago. As the rhythm of the music increased, the boy suddenly used his arms to support himself on the ground. He split his legs and rotated them in the air like a spiral. He rotated his legs, rotated his hands, rotated his legs, rotated his hands. The most classic Thomas spin of street dance was done by him. Oh, the crowd's enthusiasm was ignited in an instant. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but shout. Although his movements were not as good as those experts on the internet, the boy successfully rotated 7 times before stopping. There was a thunderous applause. He jumped up and stood in the middle of the field, panting and excitedly cupping his hands. However, since it was a dance competition, it wasn't a one-man show. The boy gestured with his hands and made a dance invitation gesture to the crowd in front of him. The other group seemed to be dancers from the ethnic village. They were also excessively young. They didn't show any weakness and sent out a boy wearing a short meow coat and a lace headscarf. What opened Poplar Fruit's eyes was that he actually used the meow's drum beats to create a street dance flavor. He followed the rhythm of the hip-hop music and beat the wooden drum at his waist while jumping and shaking his hands and waist. Finally, he did a classic fast and slow alternating movement in mechanical dance, which also ignited the cheers of the audience. Next, the boy in the meow uniform gestured a dance invitation gesture. How could they compete? Poplar Fruit was a little anxious for the crowd of tourists. He didn't expect the opposite party to have such an amazing dance expert who could integrate ethnic dance into the highly entertaining street dance. Without better innovation, there was basically no hope of beating the other party. Chapter 467. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The handsome young man in Meow Meow clothing knew how to stir up the atmosphere of the audience. After he finished his performance, he did not immediately return to his team. Instead, he jumped around and clapped his hands rhythmically above his head. The tourists who were watching the show did not mind at all as they followed the beat and shouted. It was not a grudge. Looking at his friendly face and warm smile, the young man just wanted more tourists to join in. After all, the ethnic village relied on these small events to attract popularity. Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. He suspected that the ethnic village had arranged this from the beginning. Although there were many tourists, it was not easy to meet a young man who could dance. Apart from the uncles and aunties. At this moment, a girl was suddenly pushed out from the crowd of tourists. Poplar Fruit's eyes glanced and he was overjoyed. What was the saying again? Ah! Song Jiwen exclaimed. He said what Poplar Fruit was thinking. Enemies really do meet. Why do I see her again? Wasn't it her? Small stature, cute baby face, clean and tidy sportswear. It was the little Chili that Song Jiwen provoked today. Hey, who pushed me out? Little Chili wrinkled her nose, rolled up her sleeves, and turned around to look. Lao Guo, let's go? It's getting late. Song Jiwen shrunk his head and said. Poplar Fruit smiled. His empty left hand clasped Song Jiwen's shoulder and lifted him up. He smiled and said, Why should we go? It's getting lively. Let's watch first. There were not many people who could embarrass a mosquito, let alone a girl. It was rare to see such a situation. How could Poplar Fruit let Song Jiwen slip away so easily? Go and Lon. A girl in the crowd waved her arm and said with a smile. Piggy. The little Chili named Enlon stretched out her right index finger. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. Be careful of your little butt tonight. With that, she tried to squeeze back into the crowd. However, it was rare for a tourist to volunteer to appear. How could the young man in the Meow uniform let her go? He ran up with a smile and grabbed Enlan's arm. It was not without reason that Song Jiwen called the girl Little Chili Pepper. Poplar Fruit clearly saw that the moment the young man in Meow Meow grabbed her arm, her eyebrows were raised, and her entire person was exuding a fierce aura. Only Poplar Fruit could see her movements clearly. Like lightning, Enlon completed the action of turning around and locking her wrist. Fortunately, she managed to stop the car in time. She merely grabbed the young man's wrist, and the cold expression between her brows eased. This action. Poplar Fruit frowned. It felt very familiar. The young man in Meow clothes did not notice it. The moment Enlon turned her head, he was stunned. There was actually such a cute girl in the world. She had an exquisite face and a graceful figure. He did not even notice Enlan's gaze. His gaze was all focused on Enlan's pink and soft lips. Fuck. He's been holding her for so long. What is he trying to do? Amidst the laughter of the crowd, Poplar Fruit clearly heard Song Jiwen's dissatisfied muttering from the side. Poplar Fruit looked at Song Jiwen strangely, and realized that his attention was focused on the young man in Meow clothes' hand that was holding Enlon. Swallowing his saliva, the young man in Meow clothes barely regained his senses before Enlon lost her temper. He coughed softly and then bloomed his warmest and most charming smile. Miss, since you're here, why go back so soon? Why don't you dance too? I don't know how to dance. Enlon frowned as she looked at the young man's hand that was already grabbing her arm. The young man in Meow clothes finally let go tactfully. He continued to smile and said, It's okay. Just have some fun. If you don't know how to dance, I can teach you. It's very easy to learn. His words and tone were like that of a big brother. However, Enlon, who had always hated others looking down on her, obviously did not fall for his trick. She twisted her shoulders, thought for a moment, and said, I don't need you to teach me. I'll dance. Why bother with him? Poplar Fruit heard Song Jiwen's muttering again. However, Poplar Fruit did not care anymore. Together with the surrounding crowd, he was looking at the cute girl in the field with curious and expectant eyes. He did not know how she would react. Papa. Pretty sister. At this time Kiki, who was looking around, finally found Enlan. She happily patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and called out. Her childish voice attracted the attention of the surrounding crowd. Poplar Fruit could clearly feel that Enlan also glanced at him. Then her eyes slid past him and landed on Song Jiwen's head, who was sneaking around. When she saw Song Jiwen, she raised her eyebrows. However, now was not the time. The young man in the Miaowei suit stood beside her attentively and asked, "What kind of dance song do you want?" "Whatever." Enlan retracted her gaze, looked at the young man in the Miaowei suit, and said indifferently, "Then let's have a slower one. Jiangnan style, you know how to do this, right?" The young man in the Miaowei suit said with a smile. There was a reason why he chose this dance song. Jiangnan style was much simpler than the dance songs of street dance, but the rhythm was also very bright and lively. The main reason was that the music video of this song was too famous. The horse riding dance was popular all over the world. Anyone could dance a few times. It was the best way to inspire the enthusiasm of the audience. "Come on." Enlan took off the hair tie on her wrist, shook her head, and tied her loose hair into a ponytail. Then, she pushed the young man in the Miaowei suit who was still following her, and was about to lead the dance. She said ruthlessly, "Get out of the way." It was as if he was standing there in the way. As soon as she said this, the crowd burst into laughter. The young man in the Miaowei suit blushed. He had no choice but to stand further away and leave the central area. The people from the ethnic village found the song. Not long after, the brainwashing prelude of Jiangnan style began to resound throughout the entire venue. Like the onlookers, Poplar Fruit could not help but twist his body. It was not easy for him to suppress his desire to move. "What is she doing?" Seeing that Enlan was standing in the middle and not moving, the audience discussed animatedly. "Don't try to be brave if you don't know how to do it." Song Jiwen curled his lips. She moved. Poplar Fruit suddenly saw Enlan make a Taiji fist starting pose. What? Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded. He could even hear the sound of glasses falling to the ground around him. No wonder it was so familiar. It turned out that this girl learned Taiji fist. Poplar Fruit saw the girl skillfully gesturing the moves of Taiji fist, and muttered in his heart. However, no matter how good she was at Taiji fist, she could not do it at this time. Who had ever seen someone perform Taiji fist to Jiangnan style? Was this still dancing? Such a question did not only stay in Poplar Fruit's heart, but was also voiced by many people. Chapter 468. Taiji fist was a traditional martial art. It was worlds apart from modern popular dances. In the past, if someone had confused Taiji fist with dance, Poplar Fruit would have been the first to stand up and object. However, today, Enlan was going to overturn everyone's understanding, including Poplar Fruit's. At first, it didn't seem to match. It looked like two different things were forcefully twisted together. However, as the music progressed, Enlan's performance became better and better. In many people's impression, Taiji fist was slow. However, in Enlan's hands, she could actually dance fast and slow as she pleased. Moreover, she gradually caught up with the rhythm of the music. How should one put it? Enlan seemed to be using a mechanical dance to practice Taiji fist. Following the rhythm of the Jiangnan style, all the joints in her body seemed to be broken down by the movements of Taiji fist. Every beat was twisted in a different direction. It even gave people the feeling that although she stopped, she was still moving smoothly. Amazing! Poplar Fruit's eyes were wide open. The girl in the middle of the field was the most powerful Taiji fist expert he had ever seen. To be able to use her body so freely was enough to prove that she, like Poplar Fruit, had experienced a period of martial arts cultivation with a fast and slow rhythm. A person with such a foundation would definitely not be weak in real martial arts. Poplar Fruit gave Enlan a thumbs up in his heart. He even felt that the eldest senior brother in the Xingyi Fist Dojo might not be stronger than Enlan. Enlan's Taiji fist did not follow a routine. She seemed to have chopped up the entire fist move, and then brandished it according to her own understanding. This was also what Poplar Fruit advocated. If martial arts only focused on routines, then it would really be a dead end. Only when there was no move in the heart could one be a true expert. Huff huff. A strange sound came to his ears. Poplar Fruit turned his head and saw that Song Jiwen was staring at Enlon in the middle of the field. His breathing was a little rapid. If it wasn't for the night, Poplar Fruit would definitely be able to see Song Jiwen's flushed cheeks. The music gradually reached the climax of the Jiangnan style. The rhythm that was like a machine gun was getting faster and faster. Poplar Fruit did not care about Song Jiwen. He turned his head back to the stage and found that Enlon was in an undulating horse stance, as if she was riding a horse. Her hands were spread out in front of her chest, and her movements were getting faster and faster. When it reached the peak, the entire audience was in an uproar. That's great! Poplar Fruit wanted to applaud Enlan's creativity. He cheered along with the crowd. Poplar Fruit could also do such a move, and it looked better than Enlan's. However, such creativity was something that Poplar Fruit would never be able to come up with. There was still a segment after that. Enlan used a single whip kick. She didn't put it down but raised it higher and higher. At this point, she was already somewhat out of rhythm. However, no one cared about this. When they saw that Enlan was actually able to stand on one leg and pull her other leg to the same height as her head, they all immediately applauded. That was not the end. Enlan did not retract her leg. She slowly leaned her upper body back, and the upright leg and the raised leg maintained a vertical line. What was she doing? The surrounding tourists covered their mouths in shock. Some were worried that she would accidentally fall or sprain her waist. When Enlan's upper body was almost parallel to the ground, she suddenly raised her arms above her head. Then she exerted force on her waist and twisted her body into an inverted U shape. She supported herself with both hands on the ground and flipped over. In the end, she landed steadily on the ground. During this process, her legs maintained a 180-degree line. Even if she flipped backward, she did not waver at all. It was a long song, but Enlan's entire action took less than 2 seconds. People only felt that in the end, in the rhythm of the music that seemed to be about to explode, Enlan completed an unbelievable, and even a little like action like a windmill. When the music ended, the entire venue was silent. Everyone was shocked and mesmerized by Enlan's bold action. For a moment, they forgot to respond. Song Jiwen was the first to react. He put his hands in front of him and secretly clapped under the cover of the crowd. Before Enlan could see who was the first to clap, the entire venue exploded like a drop of water falling into a pot of oil. Cheers and whistles were endless. Enlan seemed to be a little unused to such a lively scene. She kept bowing with a red face. She was about to return to the crowd to look for her companions. Please wait, please wait. The young man in the Miao uniform ran over and stood in front of Enlan with a smile. Although he was not too tall, compared to Enlan, who was not even 1.6 meters tall, he was like a wall. Enlan had to raise her head to see him. The young man in the Miao uniform was holding a wireless microphone in his hand. He smiled and said to Enlan, "Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Everyone, do you think our cute little sister's dance is good?" The young man in the Miao uniform turned his head and asked the surrounding tourists. Through the speakers in the venue, his voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. After saying that, he even extended the microphone. Seeing him like this, everyone laughed and shouted, "Yes." However, he did not notice that Enlan raised her eyebrows again because of his words. "Then let's interview you. Can you reveal your name to our audience?" The young man in the Miao uniform asked with a smile. Enlan hesitated for a moment, but still said generously, "Chen Anlin." "Wow. What a good name. You're just like your name. Little sister is like an orchid in an empty valley. Pure and beautiful." The young man from the Miao tribe said with a smile. "I'm not an orchid. I'm Enlan," Chen Anlin said angrily. "Also, don't call me little sister." "That's right. All you do is flirt with girls." Song Jiwen's whisper rang in Poplar Fruit's ears. "Is that so? Ha 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 ha." The young man from the Miao tribe laughed awkwardly and quickly changed the topic. "Then Miss Enlan, did you learn to dance in the past? You dance so well today." "No, I learned martial arts." Chen Anlin shook her head and said honestly, Today was my first time dancing. Many times, I couldn't keep up with the rhythm. Wow. That's great. Miss Enlon can dance so well for her first time. The young man from the Miao tribe selectively ignored the second half of Enlan's sentence. He shouted, "If you learn how to dance again, you'll definitely be a star of tomorrow." Chen Anlin shook her head, unwilling to continue the conversation. However, the young man from the Miao tribe seemed to be a little too attentive. He kept pestering Chen Anlin, and even deliberately put his arm around Chen Anlin's shoulder intimately. However, she quietly twisted her shoulder and avoided him. Poplar Fruit nodded slightly. Chen Anlin's seemingly casual action actually contained the skills of Tai Chi as long as she wanted. The young man from the Miao tribe could fly out horizontally as soon as he put his hand on her shoulder. Chapter 469. The young man in the Miao uniform quietly retracted his hand and changed his hand to hold the microphone, as if to cover it up. He still smiled warmly and said, "Next, we have a few more dance performances. Everyone in the audience can participate. Miss Enlon, do you want to join us?" Chen Anlin wrinkled his nose and shook his head. The young man in the Miao uniform persevered and said, "I believe everyone is looking forward to seeing Miss Enlon dance again. Don't you think so, everyone?" It was unknown who started it, but from a small group to the whole audience, they were shouting, "Enku enku." Of course, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen did not shout. Poplar Fruit felt that there was no need to push the little girl so hard. Didn't he see that she had already shook her head? Poplar Fruit did not know what Song Jiwen was thinking, but seeing how he looked at the young man in the Miao uniform with dissatisfaction, Poplar Fruit guessed that he was probably thinking about the same thing as him. "No, I still have something to do." Chen Anlin said this and turned his head to squeeze into the crowd, not even giving the young man in the Miao uniform time to react. The young man in the Miao uniform smiled awkwardly. He was stunned for a moment before he casually said a few words and let the next performance go on stage. With Chen Anlin in front of them, the dances behind them were not worth watching. Poplar Fruit shook his head and squeezed out of the crowd with Song Jiwen. They were going to leave too. "Papa." Just now in the crowd, it was noisy all around. Kiki could not even talk to her father. After coming out, she could finally ask, "Pretty sister, what is she doing?" "Her?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "She was dancing just now." "Well, you can say that she was practicing Tai Chi." "Kiki, do you think Pretty Sister is good at it?" "It's very good." Kiki nodded seriously and said, "Kiki wants to learn too." "Okay, Dad will teach you when we get back," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Before he could finish his sentence, Song Jiwen curled his lips and said, "What's there to see? He's just playing to the gallery." If these words were said in public, it would be biased, but Poplar Fruit knew that this guy was just being stubborn. He smiled and said, "Oh, you still dare to talk big? Be careful, or the beautiful Kung Fu girl will beat you up." Teste. Song Jiwen's face was full of disdain. He raised his head and unconsciously raised his voice as he said, "What are you afraid of? As for Taiji Fist, it's not like I haven't seen my grandfather practice it before. It's just like public square dancing. It looks elegant, but in reality, it's just fancy and impractical." Song Jiwen knew that Poplar Fruit knew Kung Fu, but he never knew what kind of Kung Fu Poplar Fruit knew. So when he said this sentence, he was a little careless. His words even included Poplar Fruit. Even if he was a brother, he couldn't just slander his own martial arts beliefs. Poplar Fruit raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He was about to refute Song Jiwen, but someone beat him to it. "What did you say?" A clear voice mixed with anger suddenly came in. "Ah!" Song Jiwen and Poplar Fruit were shocked. They turned their heads and saw that the cute girl who had stunned the audience was standing less than 5 meters away from their right-hand side. Her companions were still a little far away, but they gradually followed her. Obviously, Chen Anlin saw Song Jiwen and the others, so she left the team and came over. As a result, she heard Song Jiwen's rude words. If you looked at Chen Anlin's current appearance, she was absolutely harmless. When she was angry, her mouth was slightly puffed up. Because of the baby fat on her cheeks, she looked even cuter. Who would have thought that her temper was a bit fiery, And she was also good at Tai Chi. TSK, eavesdropping on our conversation, too immoral. Song Jiwen preemptively shook his head and sighed. Who's immoral? Is it very noble to speak ill of others behind their backs? Chen Anlin was very angry with Song Jiwen, so she retorted. What I said is the truth. Song Jiwen waved his hand and said, Tai Chi is very ordinary. My grandfather practiced it for a few years, but now he can't even kill a chicken. Mosquito. Poplar Fruit tapped Song Jiwen's shoulder, wanting to tell him that Tai Chi was not as bad as he thought. It's okay, I understand. I won't lower myself to the level of a girl. Song Jiwen misunderstood. He waved his hand and said, Forget it, I admit that you are very good, okay? Let's not quarrel. Who's quarreling with you? Chen Anlin was about to go crazy from Song Jiwen's attitude. What did he mean by not lower himself to the level of a girl? Was she being unreasonable? Did she need him to give her a way out? Wasn't this expression that he still didn't believe in her strength? You come here. Let's fight. Chen Anlin pointed at him angrily and said, I don't hit girls. Song Jiwen shook his head and said. Chen Anlin's eyes glared, almost spitting fire. She was about to explode. At this time, two boys walked out from among Chen Anlin's companions. They were not very tall, but they dressed quite well. They looked at Song Jiwen unhappily, then turned to gently ask Chen Anlin. Chen Anlin, do you want us to teach him a lesson? It was not like they had never fought in school before. Moreover, there was a high combat value poplar fruit standing beside him now. Song Jiwen was not afraid. He laughed and said, Oh, the flower protectors have appeared. Chen Anlin was provoked by Song Jiwen's words. Her face immediately darkened. She turned around, opened her arms, and pushed the two boys in the direction of her companions. She shouted in dissatisfaction. Hey, all of you, go back. When did it become your turn to stand up for me? Song Jiwen stood there and looked on with a smile. Poplar Fruit glanced at him. Originally, he wanted to watch the show quietly as a bystander. However, Song Jiwen was his brother. Poplar Fruit did not want to see Song Jiwen make a fool of himself in public. He took a step forward. While Chen Anlin was pushing her companions, he whispered to Song Jiwen, Mosquito, don't blame me for not reminding you. That little pepper really knows kung fu. Song Jiwen was surprised. He whispered, No way? I couldn't tell. She's so small and delicate. Poplar Fruit's mouth twitched. He said, Haha, don't look at her short stature. 5 of you won't even be enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. Is it that exaggerated? Song Jiwen's eyes almost popped out. Are you kidding me? What do you think? Poplar Fruit looked at him helplessly. If he had known this would happen, he would not have reminded him. He looked into Poplar Fruit's eyes and realized that Poplar Fruit was not kidding. What should he do? If that little chili pepper really wanted to spar with him, then he would really lose all his face. Song Jiwen scratched his head. He saw that Chen Anlin had already driven away her companions and walked back alone. Song Jiwen swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He felt a little weak in his heart. Chapter 470. Seeing Chen Anlin walking over, Song Jiwen was a little guilty, but he still stood straight and said with a cheeky smile, Hey little girl, don't tell me you want us to stay because I'm handsome? Bullshit. Chen Anlin spat without showing any weakness and said, Why don't you look in the mirror? With your appearance, I don't know if you're a grand marshal who ran out of a pigsty. Poplar Fruit was just unscrewing a bottle of water. When he heard this, he suddenly burst out laughing. Hey, personal attack? Song Jiwen said with an angry expression. He waved his hand and said, Forget it, I'm not a petty person. You can go now. Wait a minute. Chen Anlin walked in front of him and grabbed Song Jiwen's sleeve. Song Jiwen thought she was going to hit him. He was shocked and his face instantly turned pale. Fortunately, it was dark and she couldn't see it. You have to apologize. Although Chen Anlin was very angry, her angry look was so cute that it didn't make others feel threatened at all. Song Jiwen's mind flashed a thought. Old Gua can't be lying to me, right? How can my daughter be a master when she's so cute? Apologize for what? Song Jiwen unconsciously straightened his back again. Because you just insulted our Tai Chi fist, Chen Anlin said with her head raised and her bright eyes. When did I insult your Tai Chi fist? Song Jiwen flatly denied. He guiltily avoided Chen Anlin's gaze and said, Did I say something wrong? Tai Chi fist is indeed for uncles and aunties to play. You can go to any big park in the morning and see it. Chen Anlin was angry at Song Jiwen's sophistry, but she couldn't find a strong rebuttal. That's different. How is it different? It's called Tai Chi. Song Jiwen laughed and said, Okay, don't be angry. It's my fault, okay? Actually, your performance just now was very good. Although it was a compliment, why did it sound so perfunctory? Chen Anlin was very unhappy. She said seriously, No. You have to fight with me once to see if Tai Chi fist is really as weak as you said. No. Song Jiwen shook his head like a rattle drum and said, I never hit a woman. Then don't treat me as a woman, Chen Anlin said valiantly. My friends say I'm a man. I can see that. Song Jiwen. What did you say? Chen Anlin looked at Song Jiwen suspiciously. I didn't say anything, I just said you're beautiful. Song Jiwen put on a smiling face and said kindly. Chen Anlin's eyes flashed shyly, but she immediately recovered. She said discontentedly, What will it take for you to fight with me? Give me a straightforward answer. Are you still a man? Song Jiwen held his breath. He raised his head and said, What do you mean I'm not a man? Okay, as you wish, I'll fight with you. As soon as he said this, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, Is Song Jiwen retarded? I just told him that the opponent is a master. How dare he accept the challenge? Okay. Chen Anlin nodded with satisfaction. She let go of her hand and prepared to get into a fighting stance. Wait a minute. Song Jiwen shouted. Chen Anlin turned her head in confusion. She saw Song Jiwen take a step back and pull Poplar Fruit up. He said seriously, You can fight with me, but I don't bully people. If you can beat my little brother Poplar Fruit, then I'll fight with you. Little brother? If Poplar Fruit wasn't being watched, he would have slapped Song Jiwen on the back of his head. Although he was pretending, this guy was too much. Song Jiwen was laughing in his heart. He felt that he was really too smart. First he used Poplar Fruit, who was good at martial arts, as a shield. What else was there to be afraid of? Because if Poplar Fruit was better than Chen Anlin, then he wouldn't have to fight. If Poplar Fruit was defeated, then what was the point of him fighting? He could just smile and beg for mercy. However, Song Jiwen still felt that the possibility of Poplar Fruit winning was higher. After all, the opponent was a petite and cute girl. 1 is a fight, 2 is also a fight. Come on, Chen Anlin said indifferently and hooked his finger at Poplar Fruit. Go. Song Jiwen reached out to hug Kiki, but Kiki didn't let him. Poplar Fruit put Kiki down and told her not to run around. Then he whispered to Song Jiwen, who cheated his brother, You're dead. He healed Gua, don't be so serious. Song Jiwen said with a smile. In fact, Poplar Fruit could have refused and pushed Song Jiwen up to be beaten up. Who asked this kid to keep talking bad about Tai Chi? However, Poplar Fruit took the opportunity and didn't say much. Instead, he felt a little excited. That's right. When he was watching the dance, he noticed that Chen Anlin was a Tai Chi master. At that time, he wanted to fight with her. It was rare to meet someone who knew martial arts, especially Tai Chi. Poplar Fruit's hands were itching. How could he care whether Chen Anlin was a girl or not? Since the opportunity came to him, Poplar Fruit certainly wouldn't refuse. Old Gua. Song Jiwen hurried to Poplar Fruit's side and said, She's a girl. Give way. Don't make it too ugly. After that, he ran back to Kiki's side, leaving a confused Poplar Fruit standing there. Come on. Chen Anlin was in a horse stance. She looked at Poplar Fruit and said, You're not going to use some excuse, are you? Poplar Fruit smiled and patted his clothes. He walked to the middle of the field and stood with his hands behind his back. Then he stretched out his right palm. This was his starting position. I apologize on behalf of my friend. He just talked nonsense to provoke you. In fact, Tai Chi is. Poplar Fruit wanted to leave a good impression on Song Jiwen, so he said, However, before he could praise Tai Chi, he was interrupted by Chen Anlin. She shouted, "Let's fight. Don't talk nonsense." As soon as she finished speaking, she attacked. Poplar Fruit was a little depressed. However, he reacted quickly and dodged Chen Anlin's palm. Then, he turned his feet into an axis and swung his body to avoid Chen Anlin's continuous opening and closing palms. Chen Anlin's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Although she considered that her opponent might be an ordinary person, she had already been merciful. However, with Chen Anlin's skills, her speed was not something an ordinary person could resist. It was fine that he dodged the first palm, but she had already followed up with 2 more moves. Poplar Fruit could still dodge them easily. How was this possible? There was one move where Yanggua's back was facing him. Could it be that he had eyes behind his back? Chapter 471. TSK, you can't even touch the corner of my little brother's clothes, and you want to fight with me? Song Jiwen said proudly. Poplar Fruit frowned and looked at Song Jiwen. He didn't know what was wrong with this guy today. He had never seen him like this before. His words were harsh to the ears. Could it be that he had taken the wrong medicine and had gone crazy? Kiki, who was at his feet, moved to the side in disgust. Chen Anlin, on the other hand, was not affected. She let out a delicate shout and hit him again in disbelief. Dodging, 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 Yanggua was as slippery as a loach. In fact, during this process, Yanggua occasionally displayed the Tai Chi movement, but more often than not, he practiced the 8 steps meteor kick. Chen Anlin stopped for a while in doubt, but she didn't see it in the end. Chen Anlin felt that she was going to go crazy today. Not only did she meet an excellent man, but so many things also happened when she wanted to teach him a lesson. Then what was the matter with the person in front of her? Wasn't he a father-level Appa who looked harmless to humans and animals? How come she couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes? Chen Anlin was born in a martial arts family. Her ancestors came from the Chen family. A book of fifth scriptures created the glory of the Chen family in Jincheng. Whether it was in troubled times or modern times, the Chen family's martial arts were famous in Jincheng. Chen Anlin was the strongest inner disciple of the new generation of the Chen family. Speaking of inner disciples, the Chen family's martial arts had always been passed down to males and not females. It was said that the tradition had been passed down from the Chen family. Even if they opened a martial arts school and recruited students, they were still very cautious when selecting inner disciples. So, until now, there were only 2 inner disciples with different surnames. Chen Anlin was the first female disciple cultivated in the family after the Chen family broke the tradition. Of course, Chen Anlin's aptitude did not disappoint his parents. He had achieved inner strength at such a young age, leaving his peers in the dust. When she fought with Poplar Fruit, Chen Anlin tried her best to suppress her strength. Every time she swung her palm, she felt weak. She was also worried that she would damage Poplar Fruit and other, ordinary people. However, she didn't expect Poplar Fruit to be so powerful. She was like a butterfly. After chasing him for 3 or 4 minutes, she couldn't catch up. Unknowingly, she began to exert her strength in a fit of pique. Poplar Fruit was also suppressing his own strength. He was only using his weakest kung fu, the 8 steps meteor kick. However, he gradually realized that Chen Anlin's speed had become faster, and the wind from his palms had also become fiercer. Are you going to get serious? Poplar Fruit smiled in his heart. He decided not to dodge anymore. Although he could still dodge, it went against his original intention. If they didn't fight, how could it be considered a sparring match? After the wild horse parted its mane, turned around and pushed his palms, he began to make physical contact with Poplar Fruit. Chen Anlin was a little happy. She thought to herself, "Finally, you're not dodging anymore?" However, she soon couldn't smile anymore. Although Poplar Fruit was only parrying her moves, his leisurely expression and smooth posture didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. Chen Anlin increased her strength, and then increased her strength. In the end, she shouted and was actually forced to use a little inner strength. The first time Poplar Fruit was hit, his body shook because he was unprepared. But that was all. For Yanggua, who had an even stronger internal energy to protect his body. Chen Anlin's little bit of internal energy was just scratching his itch. However, it was enough to make Poplar Fruit's eyes widen in shock. What a familiar feeling. Was this inner strength? Poplar Fruit didn't simply think that he was the only person in the world who knew inner strength, but Master Guo of Xingyi Boxing School was a master of inner strength. But besides Master Guo, the second master of inner strength that Poplar Fruit had seen was Chen Anlin in front of him. And he was so young. Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. In fact, anyone could say that he was so young, but Poplar Fruit wasn't qualified to say so. Because in terms of age, Chen Anlin had practiced martial arts for more than 10 years before he had achieved what he had now. How long had Poplar Fruit been practicing martial arts? Less than 2 years. It was really funny that he said that Poplar Fruit was young. He was actually a master of inner strength. Poplar Fruit suddenly became excited, as if all the pores on his body were exuding a refreshing feeling. This is even more fun. Ha! Chen Anlin became more and more surprised. She realized that Poplar Fruit wasn't a sheep that could be bullied easily. She had used her inner strength, but it only made Poplar Fruit stop for a moment. However, Chen Anlin's competitive mentality didn't allow her to retreat. She let out a delicate cry and went up to meet him again. This time, Chen Anlin used all his strength. The inner strength that was as fine as hair in his meridians was all channeled to his arms. His whole body was like a graceful falling leaf. His movements were vigorous and full of strength. When he hit Poplar Fruit's arms, the collision of flesh and flesh actually made an explosive sound of compressed air. Good move. Poplar Fruit praised in his heart with satisfaction. He was no longer playing around. He also used the moves of Taiji Fist. However, his moves were more varied. Although there were only 13 moves, there were many combinations that could be used. The shadows of their movements became one under the street lights. Song Jiwen was dumbfounded. Chen Anlin's companions also opened their mouths. Their jaws almost fell to the ground. Song Jiwen finally understood why Poplar Fruit said that Chen Anlin was very powerful. If he sent himself up, he wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between Poplar Fruit's teeth. The movements of the two were getting bigger and bigger. Fortunately, they were near the parking lot. It was relatively remote, so they weren't discovered for a while. Chen Anlin was actually the most surprised. In her family, not only was she the most outstanding person among her peers, but she was also not necessarily at a disadvantage when facing elders of the same level as her uncles. She didn't expect to meet a man who looked like he was the same age as her today. He could easily deal with her when she was at full strength. Moreover, looking at his moves, he was actually using the same Taiji Fist as her. Every palm, every punch, every step looked so familiar, but there were also some differences. She couldn't tell what was different, but Chen Anlin's intuition told her that Poplar Fruit was much stronger than her. Poplar Fruit's Taiji Fist could be said to be the most refined and extraordinary. Chen Anlin's Taiji Fist had been modified countless times. It was full of good and bad moves. Naturally, Chen Anlin couldn't compare. Poplar Fruit didn't use internal strength to increase his strength. Just his Taiji Fist, which he had practiced to perfection, was enough to deal with Chen Anlin. Although the momentum was great, a large part of Chen Anlin's attack was dissipated by him. The rest of the attack didn't cause much pain to him. After fighting with Chen Anlin for so long, Poplar Fruit mainly wanted to satisfy his curiosity. He wanted to see what level Chen Anlin, a very special girl, could reach. The result made him very happy. Not to mention internal strength, Chen Anlin's basic skills were very solid. It showed that she had put in a lot of effort when she started practicing boxing. It was rare to see a child like her nowadays. Chapter 472. After his martial arts had improved, Poplar Fruit's thoughts had become like that of an old man's. When he was sparring with Chen Anlin, a sentence of admiration flashed through his mind like a master looking at his disciple. In the blink of an eye, Poplar Fruit was shocked by himself. The age difference between the two of them wasn't that big. However, only he could be distracted in such an intense fight. His talent for multitasking was really heaven-defying. Huff huff. A very obvious panting sound came from beside his ear. Poplar Fruit came back to his senses and looked. Chen Anlin's delicate face was a little pale at the moment, and her breathing was a little unstable. Poplar Fruit understood that this was a sign of excessive internal energy consumption. Suddenly he remembered that before he went on stage, Song Jiwen told him to be merciful. Then let's end it here. Poplar Fruit's shoulders suddenly sank. He hugged his knees and took a few steps forward. The muscles in his arms suddenly shook vigorously. Chen Anlin could no longer support herself, and was sent flying by Poplar Fruit. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit's strength was skillful. She was only sent flying a few steps away, and then took 2 steps back to stabilize herself. I'm not fighting anymore. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, cupped his hands and said. Huff huff. Chen Anlin was still panting heavily. She looked at Poplar Fruit with a strange expression, but she didn't continue to move. Hee hee, my little brother is strong, right? Song Jiwen's voice suddenly squeezed in. Poplar Fruit had just squatted down and hugged Kiki, who was excitedly running over to ask for a hug. When he turned his head, he found that this guy was actually shameless. He walked to Chen Anlin's side and smiled slyly. Actually, I'm stronger than him. I don't dare to fight with you because I'm afraid that I won't be able to control my strength and hurt you. Chen Anlin looked at Song Jiwen with disdain. She knew that Poplar Fruit, who didn't talk much, was indeed hiding his strength. However, this bastard in front of her was definitely bragging. Looking at his footsteps, it would be strange if he was an expert. Seeing that Chen Anlin was still panting and ignoring him, Song Jiwen pulled Poplar Fruit over and scolded seriously. I just told you to go easy on her. How can you be so ruthless to a beauty? Are you a man? Poplar Fruit looked at Song Jiwen with disdain. He had to teach this guy a lesson later. How dare he use him as a shield and blame him? However, in front of others, Poplar Fruit still had to give some face to Song Jiwen. He lowered his head and said, Sorry, I really didn't hold back just now. You also learned Taiji Fist. Chen Anlin ignored Song Jiwen and stared at Poplar Fruit. She said, You just tolerate him slandering Taiji Fist? Poplar Fruit was stunned. He shook his head and smiled. No, he was just joking. I was going to scold him. Taiji Fist is very good. Who slandered Taiji Fist? Song Jiwen lied through his teeth. Taiji Fist is beautiful and powerful. Who dares to slander Taiji Fist? Tell me and I'll beat him up. This time, not only Chen Anlin, but also Poplar Fruit looked at him with disdain. Chen Anlin's breathing calmed down a little. She looked deeply at Song Jiwen and said meaningfully, It's okay. You don't have to do it. When Song Jiwen heard this, his mouth opened and his head shrank slightly. However, Chen Anlin ignored him and looked at Poplar Fruit seriously. She bowed and said, Let me formally introduce myself. I am Chen Anlin, the 21st successor of Chen Taiji Fist. May I ask which master you are? This was really hard to answer. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. He didn't even know which master he belonged to. Could he say that he was taught by Zhang Sanfeng? Then his seniority would be high. My name is Poplar Fruit. I don't have any master. I just read a book and made some gestures. Poplar Fruit finally said honestly. Read a book? What kind of book could be learned just by reading it? Chen Anlin looked up at Poplar Fruit in surprise. Her surprised look was so cute. It's a boxing manual passed down from my ancestors. I don't know where it came from. Poplar Fruit lied. We haven't learned martial arts for many generations. Your surname is Yang. Could it be that your ancestor is Mr. Yang Luchen? Chen Anlin was surprised that she used honorifics. I know Yang Luchen. Song Jiwen said happily. Taiji Fist Grandmaster. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. At first, Poplar Fruit was a little tempted. If this was the case, then the strange phenomenon of learning boxing in his dream could be explained a little. However, after thinking about it, Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, No, my ancestors lived in Guangdong province for hundreds of years. It's impossible for them to cross paths with Master Yang Luchen. Chen Anlin didn't dwell on this issue. For Poplar Fruit's background, Chen Anlin was more curious about his skills. She was silent for a moment and said, Poplar Fruit, can I call you Brother Yang? Uncle Yang is fine, but I'm much younger than him who has a child. You have to call me brother. Song Jiwen, you can call him Brother Song or Brother One. Song Jiwen laughed. Brother Yang, it's still early. Let's fight again. Chen Anlin ignored Song Jiwen, but looked at Poplar Fruit full of fighting spirit. Fight again? Poplar Fruit looked at Chen Anlin. She had now recovered her long and even breath, but there was still a little tiredness in her serious eyes. Hey, what fight? Song Jiwen waved his hand and said, Little sister Lan, it's my treat. Let's go and have a midnight snack together. It's a pity to waste such a beautiful scenery. Are you looking for a fight? Chen Anlin waved her fist and scolded angrily. You're so annoying, do you know that? Although she was angry, she still looked very cute with her little fists clenched on her chubby cheeks. I suddenly remembered. Chen Anlin suddenly smiled and said, You haven't fought with me yet. Mr. Expert, shouldn't we spar first? If you guide me, maybe I'll be happy and go for a midnight snack with you. Song Jiwen just remembered that the cute girl in front of him was not easy to deal with. She was like Poplar Fruit said. If 5 of him rushed up, he would definitely be carried back. Seeing that she mentioned this again, Song Jiwen swallowed his saliva and laughed dryly. Let's forget about today. You're so tired. I'm not tired, I'm not tired. Chen Anlin's eyes flashed with a cold light and said, Even if we forget about today, I'll still remember. We have to go. Poplar Fruit looked at his watch. He had locked Gold in the car for almost an hour. Although he started the engine and turned on the air conditioner, it was still very dangerous for it to stay in the car for a long time. Hey, Poplar Fruit brother. Chen Anlin ran over and pulled Poplar Fruit's sleeve and said, Can you tell me which hotel you're staying in? I'll go and find you tomorrow. In order to be able to learn from the expert, the most important thing was that Poplar Fruit gave her a different feeling from the seniors in her family. Chen Anlin went all out. If it weren't for her companions, she would have left with Poplar Fruit and the others. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.